Good morning, Raptor Freaks. Lexiot's here Sunday morning, and it's a Sunday special report. And today we're going to go look at the 15 of the top candidates for a head coaching vacancy here in Toronto for the Raptors at this point. I went and did meticulous research yesterday. I looked at the 15 top candidates, the names that have been mentioned the most about possibly replacing Nick Nurse. And I did research on how long they played in the league, where they coached, whether they were winning coaches, whether they have a tie to us, all that kind of stuff. There's a spreadsheet in the link is in the chat that you can click on. It's also in the description of this live stream. Also, it's on Google, and you can check it out and look at it. It has all kinds of different categories, the 15 top candidates in it. All right, let me see. You guys, I know you're talking about something, and this is important. We will talk about this. G saying Scotty at the Maple Leafs game. Yeah, Scotty was at the game last night for the Leafs. Nameless is saying huge Leafs win last night. Massive. Leafs Nation likes Scotty now very much because Scotty, listen, Scott, we saw Scotty on Friday get on a private jet, Larry Tannenbaum's private jet for the Raptors to travel around and jet set with his dog Cardi, his big Rottweiler. And they were flying down. That must have been fun, flying in a jet just with your dog, Scotty. It's awesome. And going home and taking the dog to see all the family. Well, Scott's in West Palm Beach down there. He can travel very easily to Tampa Bay, and he made the effort to go to the Tampa Bay Lightning, Toronto Maple Leafs, game 3 of the Stanley Cup first round. And wow, he was with Larry Tannenbaum last night. That is who he was with last night, with Larry in a private box, watching the game with the owner of the Raptors and the Leafs, Larry Tannenbaum, last night. There's pictures of Scotty with him backstage after the game, hanging around the Leafs locker room and actually him interacting with the Maple Leafs. Very interesting stuff. I like that they won. I like that it was an overtime come from behind win. Good job, Leafs. Beating the Lightning on their home rink is not easy. And this is a big deal. This is a momentum shifter. Now they're up 2-1 in their series. Go, Leafs, go. I ain't going to be a hater in that kind of way. I want y'all to win. Y'all are due. And we need this to happen. Some people are saying Larry Tannenbaum has champions of all of his teams except for one, and that is his hockey team. That is the team that needs to get a championship next. Well, young Scott Wayne Barnes was there to add some good luck there. And I think that he's got new fans in the blue and white nation at this point. That Scotty Barnes being at the game last night may signify something for them, that they want him to be there for more of them. You go, Scotty. Thank you for showing support and love for Toronto in Florida. Because like his Instagram stories, he was celebrating the anthem at the beginning when they showed the Canadian Maple Leaf in the arena. And then he was very much celebrating on Leafs side. He is not a Lightning fan, and he was definitely rooting for the Maple Leafs last night. So yes, Scotty, show support for your cousin team in our MLSE organization, the Toronto Maple Leafs. Scotty Barnes, a good luck charm, it seems, hanging out with Larry T, being cool guys at the Stanley Cup playoffs. Yeah, I love seeing it. I love seeing it. All right, let me see what else you guys are saying. Fiercey's here. Good to see Fiercey. Good morning, fam. Looking forward to brainstorm with y'all. Characteristics I would look for are innovation, bench development, team cohesiveness, empathy, supporting vets as well. Numero uno, culture. Yes. With Nick Nurse being so like casual about not really having as much structure as they'd like, we do need somebody who is a structured kind of coach, maybe a very perfectionist kind of coach, somebody who really thinks about every little detail, somebody that wants to make them work so much on something that they'll get sick of it, but they'll learn it like it's the back of their hand. That is the kind of thing we need in our next coach, is somebody to give them some good, strong fundamentals and muscle memory and structure of doing things, drilling it into them. And then they'll be amazing and they'll do a very good job. So I'm excited about it, Fiercey. I love the things that you have on here. Innovation. Yeah, that was something that was a good strength of Nick's for a long time. And in some ways, people would steal and cheat from him and steal his stuff all around the league. We still see it to today. And but in some ways, the innovation of what Nick is doing was not really working at this point. And that's why, hey, Bye. Even if we didn't really want to fire him, well, he wanted to get fired. That was for sure. Let's see. Also, bench development, hugely, hugely important. This is a huge area where we can improve off of Nick Nurse because obviously this was one of his biggest weaknesses. This whole entire season, bench development was like really the glaringest, most glaring weakness. And I'm all about finding a coach that doesn't mind giving a little bit of a chance to some of the guys that are on the bench that aren't totally in the rotation to give them a chance to shine in situations and come out and contribute in good ways and make some sort of role for themselves on the team. So this is definitely something that's important. Team cohesiveness. This is something where we got to get back to. I mean, it's not that our guys weren't together or fighting or not getting along. It's just that they were kind of about being together or hanging out. Maybe we need more bowling nights. Maybe we need more team events outside of things. Maybe these guys need to go meet this summer and hang out and have a vacation together and really bond, really get to know each other even better, and really make it feel like a band of brothers, that they're all for one for all, and that they're in the foxhole together. Because in some ways, that is an important part of being a basketball team is feeling like you're connected and cohesive with each other. And we did not have that this past year. And that was scary to me because I know they had all the best intentions of staying connected and being connected together, but they failed at it this year. There was a lack of connection with our guys. And this is something that our coach, the next coach, is going to have to cultivate and get to happen for us going forward. Empathy. Empathy is interesting. Like, are you saying you want somebody that'll feel sad for the guys or feel like look out for them emotionally? I'm not totally about that. In some ways, I feel like the Raptors have been a little cushy in the last couple years. Since the championship, things have been nice. In some ways, we gotten complacent because we're a little bit too comfortable. So, in some ways, empathy isn't the thing I'm worried about right now. In fact, sometimes we need some cold, hard truth, is what we need in some ways more than comfortable empathy. And I may want somebody who's a little bit hard edge. Masai in his interview on Friday said something about for a team to be really good, there needs to be some friction, if you know what I'm talking about. A little bit of friction, a little bit of competition in the team, a little bit of like, something to motivate, light a fire under their asses. And in some ways, I don't think empathy is the right emotion from the coach. In fact, I'd like to see kind of a hard ass. I'd like to see somebody who's kind of like trying to push them and push them further than they are right now, instead of just kind of like, well, if you're not feeling well, go ahead and take the day off, Scott. No, let's push them. Let's push them harder in some ways. So I don't totally agree with that word, but I like all the rest of them. Supporting vets as well. Yeah. Yeah, we'll see what's going to happen. Y'all can look at my spreadsheet, and if you have any questions, you want to talk about anybody in particular on that spreadsheet, we can elaborate more. I will go over it, just kind of over it a little bit, but gloss over it. But yeah, we'll see. Shir Khan's here. Good morning to Raptor Freak, Rookie of the Year, Shir Khan. How are you today? One thing we need from the next coach is player development for sure. Scotty, Koloko, Banton need to take that next step to get back into the top 6 of the East. Harper Jr. and Weezy have potential. All right, Shir Khan. On that, I'm going to open up the spreadsheet, and I have a column at the very end. And for the 15 candidates I have listed, there's kind of like different groups. You have a group of former 905 coaches and Patrick Mutombo, Jama Mahalea, and Jerry Stackhouse. And then you've got kind of like old veteran coaches that have been around for a while, and like Kenny Atkinson, Frank Vogel, and Sam Cassell. And then you've got European coaches that actually Messiah's interviewed before. When he interviewed Nick Nurse and made him the coach when we fired Casey before, a couple of these names were people that he interviewed. Of course, our guy Sergio is on that list. A young coach from Lithuania, Sarunas Jaskiavikas, and then also the great, amazing master of European basketball, Ettore Messina, who is somebody that has been an assistant coach in the NBA for the Lakers and the Spurs in the past. And something on his resume, he may want to come over and coach our Raptors team. It's a long shot. He's older. He's pushing 70. So there's a little bit of that kind of thing. But these European coaches are very much in the run. And then, of course, we've got coaches that have to do with our team from before: Adrian Griffin, Errol Watson, Rex Kalamian, And then you've got young hotshot coaches in the league right now, as far as Chris Quinn, Charles Lee, and M.A. Adoka. So we'll go over the different kind of groups of the different coaches and the strengths and the weaknesses of each of them. And as I said, there's a link in the description of this live stream and also in the chat where you guys can click on and you can see my work that I did yesterday with that kind of stuff. Now, Shirkan's talking about developing specific players. Well, we can look on the spreadsheet. I have a column at the very end called development, and it's basically got the number one guy that these coaches contributed to help in their careers earlier on. And it's kind of interesting. Now, Kenny Atkinson, I put Jeremy Lin because he's the best example because he had a big part in Jeremy Lin becoming Linsanity. But it really was like he's also developed guys like D'Angelo Russell, Spencer Dinwiddie, Nicholas Claxton. So there's quite a list of guys that he's been very successful with developing. And in fact, Kenny Atkinson, one of his strengths is developing. And that is something that he actually gets a big, huge check mark for. Sam Cassell worked very extensively with John Wall. In fact, John Wall gives a lot of credit to Sam Cassell for him and earlier in his career, helping him become the player that he would become. Adrian Griffin, his success story is in the past when he was with the Chicago Bulls. He was very key in getting Jimmy Butler to make jumps in his game. I don't know if you guys knew that about Adrian Griffin, our coach, that he was a huge part of making Jimmy Butler the pro he is today. Now, Jaska Veek has not really coached a lot of NBA players, so he does not have an NBA player he developed. Rex Kalamian, who's been around forever. He has 28 years as an assistant coach in the NBA, never been a head coach. He had a big part in helping to develop the young Thunder core with James Harden, Russell Westbrook, and Kevin Durant. So he was there for that stuff. That's kind of an interesting development story for him. Charles Lee is a much younger coach. He's the youngest coach on this list. So there's not a whole lot of names that he's developed. But one person he did develop kind of from university is Mike Muscala. Jama's big success story for development is Andrew Wiggins. And that's partly because they're both Canadian. And he worked with him when he was younger. And then he's worked with him since he's been on Golden State in the last couple years. So Wiggins is kind of a development success story for Jama Mahalea. Ettore has not really coached in the States much, so he doesn't have one. Then we know Patrick Mutombo's development time with the 905. Chris Quinn, a little bit, nobody really that I can point out that he had a direct hand in developing and like other than like Tyler Hero. Of course, he's probably had a big part in Tyler Hero and Max Strus and the Miami guys that are coming up there. Sergio, I mean, what can we say? Maybe we can say some of the Raptors around the time when Sergio is around the team. He maybe helped develop. Jerry Stackhouse, very much a big person that he developed is one of our guys on the team right now is Chris Boucher. When Jerry was coaching the 905, he very much had a big impact on getting Chris Boucher to take it to the next level. Now, MA is given credit for helping to develop Kawhi Leonard from when he was very young under Popovich in San Antonio. That is one of his big success stories. MA is apparently one of the mentors to Kawhi Leonard. Frank Vogel was a very important person in Paul George's career early on. And then, of course, Earl Watson gets a lot of credit for the work with Devin Booker. So you can kind of see the names of people that these coaching candidates have worked with in the past, and you can kind of understand their levels of experience and with what they did with development from that column. So, all right, Guardian Transit saying, I would like to see the Raptors pick up 2 unsigned seasoned vets to join young guys on the bench going into next season. I like that idea. I think that we could, I think that this whole youth movement in the league is stupid in a way. I think that, sure, you can get a whole bunch of prospects, kind of like Oklahoma City, and just kind of hope they pan out. But I think overall, people really should build their team with vets. I mean, if you want to be closer to winning a championship, you need vets. And in some ways, vets will help you get closer to the championship faster than waiting around for a young player to develop over 10 years. So in some ways, if we want to get closer to the championship sooner, we could bridge that by getting more veteran guys. You know, I was saying this yesterday that if Adoka comes in and he's our new coach, if he tells Masai and Bobby, you get me these two vets, I'll make us win like crazy this year. They probably will do that. And that's the kind of thing I'm looking forward to the possibilities of, as far as like, yeah, let's get a couple more vets this summer and add them to our bench. There's going to be a couple guys leaving, and there'll be a couple guys, new guys coming in. And would this count, Guardian Transit? Just getting Otto Porter Jr. back from injury, and he's actually playing for us this year. Would he count as one of those seasoned vets added to the mix? And he's already in the mix. I'd take him as one of those two vets. Daddy's here. Good to see Daddy. What's he saying? Let's see what Daddy's saying this morning. Very, very interested. Scotty at the Leafs game last night. Yeah, that shows a real commitment to our city and being, at first when I saw the Instagram post, I was like, yeah, Scotty's at the Leaf game. But then I've thought about it. It's like, it's game 3. The game's not here. He's in Florida at the Leaf game in Tampa Bay. And that's awesome. I love seeing that. And I love seeing him support the team like that. I mean, it does speak a lot to his allegiance. And I love that he was there with Larry. Trust me, that says a lot that he was there with owner Larry Tannenbaum. It's a very, very good look all around. It's good for Leafs Nation, good for a win. It's good for them to really love Scotty, because in some ways, Leaf Nation is saying, Scotty, you're a good luck charm. And we kind of want you around for games now. Jimmy's saying, go Leafs, go. That's right, Popa Positivity. Let's go Leafs. Let's put the lightning out for once. And let's get to the next round and let's kick ass. Let's get that cup home to Toronto, baby. Yeah. MSJ saying that's cool. SB at the game. As for a coach, anyone who has an offense in mind is cool with me, but I bet the players have a lot of ideas too. They will likely have their say too. Detail coach, 100%. Yeah, well, they interviewed them on the way out, Masai said. And I don't know. I don't know that they're going to keep tabs with many of them. They're probably going to talk to Fred. They'll probably talk to Scotty, but I don't know how much they're going to talk to all the rest of the guys about who they get as a coach. I will bet you they will consult Fred about who the next coach should be. They probably will talk to Scotty and kind of give him a heads up just to keep him in the know and making him feel like he knows what's going on. But I don't know if they're really gonna like test the waters with everybody and kind of say, hey, who do you guys want? And will you vote on it or anything like that? On this spreadsheet, there are different like things we got to think about. My first column that I've got on here is age. Of course, the range of ages here go from 38 to 66. Rex Kalamian, being such a 30-year assistant coach in the league, he's never actually been a head coach. So in some ways, that's a bad thing, if you ask me. The other thing is that Rex has been in the league for 30 years and he's never won any time at any point in any of his stops anywhere in his career. The team has not won. He really is a Dwayne Casey guy. He's been following Casey around for the last 10 years, wherever job he's at. So he was here with us when Casey was here. And then when Casey went to Detroit, he went with him. I think in some ways, this is kind of like a candidate nominee, just out of like hard work and long time earned, that you consider him and you interview him. But I don't think he's a good coach for us because he's so much older than even Nick Nurse. I mean, this is 10 years older than Nick. And I don't know if we want to go in that direction. I think getting a coach in their 40s is probably the best idea. And even the guys in their 50s, I'm not totally into getting somebody like Kenny Atkinson or Sam Cassell, because I really want to get a younger coach. I feel like the coach being younger will appeal more to the younger players. And that's why you want to get somebody like MA or Earl Watson or Charles Lee instead of somebody like Messina or Scariolo or Rex Kalamian, because those guys are all in their 60s. And in some ways, you don't want to get those guys. Now, the prestige of having Ettore Messina as the head coach of the Raptors would be insane. Because listen, this guy in his Euro basketball career has won 74% of his games. He has a winning pedigree. This man wins wherever he goes, but his lack of NBA experience is there. He definitely does not. I mean, he had 2 years as an assistant coach, 1 year as the video coordinator for the Lakers, and then 1 year underneath Greg Popovich in San Antonio. So I like that he's worked with Pop. I like his pedigree for winning, but it's all in Europe, and we don't know if that'll translate. And then we wonder if Messina actually will like connect with the young American players here in Canada as a coach for the Raptors. That's always a problem that you don't know if he will connect and he'll fit in that kind of way just because of the age. So I'm very cautious about that. I love the pedigree. I love the winning percentage. I love all the championships that Messina has in Europe, but in a lot of ways, those older guys are not appealing to us. And Sergio, it's the same thing. Sergio's 62. Sergio had his time with us. He's already won a championship with us, and he's won a lot over in Europe. He's a very winning coach also. But in some ways, do we want to go backwards and go visit something like this? He did fine job coaching for Nick Nurse when he was out with COVID. Sergio had to coach a few games for us as our head coach, and he did great. He was fine. But in some ways, he's not the kind of coach we want. We really do want somebody who's young and cutting edge and is a player's coach to a degree that will easily connect with younger players that are getting more and more difficult to figure out how to connect to and get the best out of. And I don't think an older European coach is the way to go with either one of those guys. So then we look at guys like Kenny Atkinson and Frank Vogel, who are guys that actually have the most coaching experience as a head coach in the league in the time, but they have bad winning percentages. Although Vogel has a pretty good one. Of course, Vogel has won 53% of his games as a head coach in the NBA over 11 seasons. He's the most experienced coaching candidate on the list, having won the bubble championship with the Lakers as the head coach. He's an intriguing pick, but in a lot of ways, he's a retread. He's just like a normal NBA coach retread. And in some ways, I don't know how much our team would respect him. And I don't know if I'd like him as our coach. I've never really respected him as from afar, looking at him from outside. And in some ways, he's not appealing to me, even though he may have the most experience as an NBA head coach out of any of the candidates. Now, Kenny Atkinson's interesting. As far as what I said earlier, this guy is a really good development coach, and that's something we very much value. But the problem is, in the 4 seasons that he coached at Brooklyn, they were not good. They only won 38% of their games. They were starting to get better, but they were coming from a really bad place to get to a better place. And in some ways, I don't think Kenny would be a good fit because I don't know if he would fit with our young players in some ways. He did not play in the NBA, which is something that I'm actually keeping track of on this sheet. That if you played in the NBA, I'm kind of giving you a plus. He played 14 years in Europe as a pro, though, which was pretty good. But he's a Kerr guy. He's a Kerr guy, but he comes from a very interesting coaching tree where he's coached under Mike D'Antoni, Budenholzer, Tyronn Lue, and Steve Kerr. But yeah, I don't like the idea of Kenny Atkinson either. In some ways, I look at him just like Frank Vogel as retreads. And if Kenny Atkinson, he denied going to Charlotte last year. In some ways, I just don't like those picks. They're not the kind of guys, even though they have the most experience. Now, the next person with the most experience as a head coach in the NBA is actually Earl Watson after that. He had 3 years in Phoenix. And, Earl wasn't that successful there. You know what happened in that whole situation? I don't know if people know about what happened with Earl, is that Jeff Hornacek was the coach of the Phoenix Suns at that time. And he got fired like very abruptly. And they were kind of just searching for answers. And they gave the head coaching job to Earl just out of the blue really quickly. And he was very young. In fact, he was one of the youngest coaches in the NBA at that time. And that's part of the reason why he didn't do so well. Like I said, his win percentage is 28, and that's not good. That's not a good win percentage. But also that Phoenix team was very bad. But this is the thing. This was almost like 10 years ago when Earl was a coach then, and he's done only assistant coaching since. And in some ways, he may have grown and matured from it, but his head coaching experience is not good. And this is true. In some ways, I got a column there that says winner. And Earl is one of the 3 people that has not won anything at any level in any kind of way as a player or a coach. And that is a little bit disturbing about Earl. That may be his only knock to me, is that he's not proven that he can be a winner as a coach. We like all the things as far as him being connected with the team, the possibilities of him being an easier transition because of that. But also at the same time, a lot of Raptors fans are exclaiming that they don't want to be anywhere connected to Nick Nurse at this time and that they want somebody totally new. So in some ways, anybody who worked with Nick Nurse may in some ways have a strike against them coming to be a coach for us because we want a completely fresh kind of candidate who comes from a totally different school of thought. So these are kind of things we're thinking about right now as far as things. Now, I was really high on Earl yesterday, and I still am. I still think he's one of the top three candidates in my book. It's just that in some ways, his lack of proving that he can win as a coach is the biggest detriment with him, and that would be the thing that would worry me the most about with Earl Watson is that he hasn't won any at any level or anything yet, and that's a little scary in some ways to think about. All right, let me see what else you guys are saying in the comments here. But boom, boom, boom. G saying the 905 development group needs some beefing up too. You keep pointing out how they were failing our youth also. Yeah, I don't know who keeps track of who goes where. If it was Nick Nurse, then I understand why it was done so poorly last year. I think it really is the head coach of the Raptors who decides who's going to and from because they want to utilize the 905 guys to their best for their team when they want to. So they're kind of directing the traffic as far as Coloco's here, Delano's here, Jeff Doughton Jr. here. And I thought that it was a big fail last season. In fact, if Nick Nurse was sabotaging our team on the down low last year, this is how part of how he did it was he held on to the guys for different reasons away from 905 at the wrong times and didn't send them there at the right times. And I just really thought it was a big, huge fail. Now, if we had a head coach that was a former 905 coach, that would be probably a good idea because they know what it's like with that team and how it could fit and work together the best as far as like getting the most out of developing guys and giving them time on both teams as two ways or young rookies. And those three coaches candidates are Jama, Patrick Mutombo, and Jerry Stackhouse. Those guys all coached 2 years of the 905 in different places. And in fact, Jerry Stackhouse won the G League championship with Chris Boucher as the MVP his time. Now, the thing that's different about Jerry than the other two guys is he doesn't have anything to do with Nick Nurse as far as being under his coaching tree. He was a Casey guy. And in some ways, this is the interesting thing. If we can't get Casey to come back and coach our development team, like some people are saying, we need Dwayne Casey back now at this point because of the state of our roster. Well, why don't we circle back and get the guy who's kind of coming up underneath him that may be the most like Casey, and that is Jerry Stackhouse. Now, the interesting thing about Jerry Stackhouse is that he didn't continue to coach in the NBA after he left us. He went and coached Vanderbilt in college. And you know what? He won a lot there too. And he even won Coach of the Year for the SEC. So there's a lot of good things about Jerry Stackhouse that are interesting. In fact, he's the guy who has the most experience as an NBA pro in his playing career. Like I said, he's familiar with our team. He's not necessarily tethered to the Nick Nurse school of thought because he never really worked underneath him. He was working under Casey the whole time, although Nick was around. And then there's familiarity with Jerry Stackhouse also, partly because of him coaching people like Chris Boucher and other people that were on 905 around that time that are still on our team. So in some ways, Jerry Stackhouse is very different than Patrick Mutombo and Jama Malalea. So I kind of like Stackhouse the most out of those three just because he's not directly connected with Nurse. He's a proven winner and he's won a lot, and he's very much does have a connection to somebody like Chris Boucher already. Now, we like Mutombo because of his sternness, his organization, and his his attention to detail and him being very, very accountable, like holding people accountable. But in some ways he doesn't have the right kind of experience in some ways. And in some ways, I'd be worried about him being respected in the NBA as a brand new rookie coach. One of the things we got to worry about is the referees. Like when you get a new coach, this is a really big factor is you got to have somebody that the refs will already kind of respect and give calls to. If you bring in a rookie, fresh-faced coach that never played in the league, never has coached at all, they're going to get screwed with calls like crazy in the beginning. So in some ways, it's smarter to get somebody like a Kenny Atkinson, an Ime Udoka, a Jerry Stackhouse, even because he had a history as a player, than somebody like Patrick Mutombo or Jama, because those guys are not going to get any respect when they first come in as rookie head coaches. They will not, trust me. And in some ways, to get to where we want to go, we need the respect of the referees, and we don't have time to wait for them to build up respect. by playing a lot and getting more seasons. So that is a factor you got to think about. Now, Earl Watson's fine in this case too, because he had a playing career and he has good relationships with the refs already. So there's certain coach candidates that are good for this and some that do not have any of this. And unfortunately, Jama and Patrick do not have any of this, and they would be very risky to have as head coaches simply because they have no clout with the referees. This is a very, very big factor in the NBA. In fact, let's do a little segue real quick and do the ref report for tonight since we're talking about it already. Now, today in Atlanta, Zach Zarba is the crew chief for the fourth game, Boston, Atlanta. He favors the Celtics, but Tyler Ford and G. Demetis Petratus is the other two refs, and they actually favor the Hawks. We haven't had many referees favoring the Hawks in this series at all. So this is very intriguing to me, especially since Atlanta won game 3. Maybe they're trying to even up this series with Boston, having 2 out of the 3 refs statistically favoring the Atlanta Hawks today. In New York, we've got Scott Foster as the crew chief, Trey Maddox and Kevin Cutler as the rest of the crew, and all 3 of the referees are favoring the Cleveland Cavaliers on the road in game 4 against the Knicks. Of course, we know the Knicks are up 2-1. Maybe Scott Foster's coming there to even up that series to help out the Cavaliers. Denver at Minnesota, this has been consistent. There has not been a single ref that favors Minnesota. They have such a poor record over the franchise history that every single game, all 3 refs have favored the Denver Nuggets, and that is not changing today. David Guthrie is the crew chief with Bill Kennedy and Ray Acosta for the game in Minnesota today, and they all favor the Denver Nuggets. And then the last game of the day is the 4th game, Sacramento at Golden State. Josh Tiven is the crew chief, James Williams and Pat Frere as the other 2 refs, and all 3 of them, of course, favor the Warriors. So there you go. 2 refs favor the Hawks today in the Boston-Atlanta game, which is interesting. Cleveland is favored on the road in New York with Scott Foster and the crew. Denver, as per usual, as a clean sweep of the refs favoring them against Minnesota. And then Golden State is favored by the crew in the other game. Very, very interesting stuff. Very, very interesting stuff indeed with the refs. All right, let me keep going with the chat. I love seeing all the different comments. It's good stuff. Trevor J saying, good morning. Looking forward to the new season and the new Raptors team with a new coach. I'm with a very strong bench. Yes, that's what we need. This new coach needs to cultivate and develop and get a good, strong bench going for our team. Hopefully that's going to be part of what Masai looks at and wants from this person. Naco the Nachos here. Development first, good offensive schemes second. Off topic, but Westbrook was real crafty last night. Kyle Lowry also had a nice game. All right. Gerald's talking about the games last night and the events in the NBA as far as what happened on the court last night. We had Philadelphia sweeping the Brooklyn Nets and ending that series. It's really weird that they already finished their series and the Miami-Milwaukee game was only getting into the 3rd game. So it's like Philadelphia is going to get time to sit around. You know, Joel probably should have been suspended for that kick, but justice was served because he's hurt and he's not playing anyway. So in some ways, it's kind of like the basketball gods were looking out. You kick Nicholas Claxton like that, and the refs say, oh, you kicked the back of the leg, not the groin. That's why he's not in trouble. That's kind of bullshit. You know that's bullshit, NBA refs. He kicked him in the groin, and you're just trying to cover for him by saying that, oh, he kicked him in the back of the leg. Well, basketball gods figured it out, and he has a hurt back or whatever his problem is right now, and he's not totally going to be ready, maybe possibly for the first game of the second round. So, yeah, that's what happens. This is that kind of thing. Fantastic job by Westbrook, as Nako's saying, in a losing effort to the Phoenix Suns last night. You know, the Clippers, it's once again this sad story about the Clippers. They play a whole season. We have these feelings that, oh, they could do something. They could be really good. But then the injuries with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard always seem to just make the biggest disappointment for the Clippers fans. And this is once again happening. In some ways, I don't know how hurt these guys are. I worry that these guys are like kind of piddle paddling, like with their hurtness. It's got to drive Steve Ballmer mad when he pulls out his hair, the little bit that he has around his ears. But yeah, this is kind of like, you know, Stephen A. Smith saying that Kawhi Leonard is one of the worst superstars in the history of the NBA. And I kind of get what he's saying, because in some ways he is not there for his team when they need him the most. Now, on a side note, Kawhi Leonard's sister got convicted of murder and has been sentenced to life in prison for murdering an 85-year-old woman in the bathroom of a casino over a couple $1,000s. It's really disgusting and gross. And she did it herself. She had somebody wait outside and look out, and she went in and conked her on the head and took her money and left. Well, she hit her hard enough that she died 4 days later. And now Kawhi Leonard's sister will be in prison for life because of that. It's a really crazy situation. It's kind of sad. It's very disgusting in some ways, but listen, it's just it's weird, crazy world out there. This is the thing. Their father was murdered by someone, and it's just a violent world out there. It's kind of sad news, honestly. Let's keep going. Yeah, Kyle Lowry had a good game too. The Miami Heat winning against the Milwaukee Bucks, and now the Heat are up 2-1 on the number one seed in the league. Giannis not playing again, and it really, really hurt the Milwaukee Bucks. The Heat are in the driver's seat, and in some ways, I'm wondering, are they trying to steer the Bucks out of the playoffs to help the Celtics get to the finals for sure? Brian Winders, could that be a little bit of what's going on there? Miami Heat being the hit job artist, taking down the Milwaukee Bucks without Antetokounmpo. So 2-1 lead for them. Fantastic. And then the Lakers beating the Grizzlies last night to take a 2-1 lead also in their series. It's too bad. Ja came back and he played fantastic. He was big time. And they were applauding him. Meanwhile, they were jeering Dylan Brooks, who hit LeBron in the nuts in the game last night, and he got thrown out. What is it with all these kicks and hits to the nuts right now? It's crazy. Doc Rivers has some dumb things to say right now. He's saying that the NBA needs to get people to stop letting players goad the big stars into fighting with them. Motherfucker, you are such a hypocrite, Doc Rivers. Glenn Doc Rivers of the Atlanta Hawks, who played in the 80s. You did the same shit to people like Larry Bird and Julius Erving and other people in the league. So don't even give me that. You did the same exact fucking shit. You goaded the other superstars from the other team. I remember. I was a kid and I watched you. You were one of those kind of players that would do that kind of Dylan Brooks kind of stuff to try and get under the skin of the other player, the big time player, and get them out of their game. That Dennis Rodman mental games. This is just a part of the NBA. And I'm sorry, Doc, you can't get this to go away now because it's not convenient for you and Joel and James Harden. So you need to just continue the way the NBA has always been. And there will be mental games. There will be trying to get the big star out of the game. And it's just too bad you have a big, immature, dumb baby as your franchise player that can't handle it. That's the whole reason why Doc is crying about they shouldn't be able to goad the superstar players in this league. Motherfucker, you did that shit when you were playing yourself. So you just sound like a big hypocrite. I'm an old head. I remember what you were doing back in the day. So don't even act like you. It's just so fucking hypocritical and bullshit. And it really is just him trying to gain an advantage and trying to help with Embiid's immaturity as a big baby, because he knows he's not mentally tough enough to not take the bait and lash out against things like Nicholas Claxton the other day. So it's like, this is so stupid, Doc. You sound stupid, and you did that shit when you used to play. So don't even start talking that smack. That's so stupid. All right, let's keep going with the chat. Shere Khan saying, since this is going to be a new era after Nick and Casey, there needs to be a culture reset. Maybe something like build from within, since we don't get any free agents coming in and rely on young talent. I love what Masai said. He said on Friday, free agency is basically there's a disgruntled player in the league, like Kawhi Leonard way back, and needs to leave their team, and that Masai is an opportunist. He will jump into the talks when somebody like, who knows, maybe Luka Doncic is not happy this summer. And all of a sudden, Masai's got really good assets here in Toronto to try and flip something. And then all of a sudden, Luka Doncic is in a Raptors red uniform. That's what I'm saying. This is the thing he's looking at. He doesn't think about free agency anymore. He thinks about the big enchiladas that may be free and who is actually in the league in play to be able to make the moves to get them because they have the right assets to match it up. That's the thing. And some of the stuff we have is very attractive. So when a disgruntled superstar on another team is like, I want to get out of here like Kawhi did before, Masai's shown that he's ready to jump into action and give a good offer like DeMar DeRozan, and boom, all of a sudden something like that happens. So I love that he described it as that way, Shere Khan. At this point, free agency, who cares? It's about getting a big superstar who's disgruntled and having the right assets to match what that team wants to do in an emergency situation when they got to move somebody all of a sudden. That's cool. I like that he said that. But I like the other part you're saying as far as a full culture reset. Well, if we're going to do that, the top candidate is definitely Ime Udoka because he has no ties to anything Raptors from before, and he would definitely be a reset in all kinds of ways. In fact, I'm more and more liking the idea of getting Ime on our team. When I did research yesterday, I found out more how deep the connection he has with Ujiri. That this is not like this isn't like a shallow friendship. This is a real, true, deep friendship that from their work in Giants of Africa and a lot of things over the years, they are very, very close. So all the rumors about Udoka are very true, and I'm gonna guess that this may be our next coach. Seriously, because in some ways, Ma probably like really does really love Masai, and they would have a really good working relationship together. He may be our dude. I mean, there's a lot of signs showing it that may be the case. As far as like any other guys, it would be a really big culture reset. I mean, if we gave the keys to young Charles Lee, that would be very interesting. Now, he comes from the school of Budenholzer. He's only 38. He's got 9 years as an assistant coach under Budenholzer. When Darvin Ham got hired by the Lakers last summer, he elevated Charles Lee to associate head coach. So he's technically was the associate head coach this past year for the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, the thing is that experts have said that Charles Lee would have already been a head coach in this league if he had had NBA professional experience as a player. That they were always saying this dude is a superstar. He's a young guy, and he really knows his stuff. But he comes from the school of Coach Bud. And that's an interesting, intriguing thing to me is like if we wanted, that's the thing with guys like Charles Lee and Chris Quinn, we're really taking like the number one from either Spoelstra or Budenholzer. And then you can say the same thing with Kerr as far as Kenny Atkinson and whatchamacallit, Jama. These guys have been studying under other great coaches and other great systems. Do we want a mini Eric Spoelstra on our team? Well, then you go get Chris Quinn, who is absolutely the next clone of Eric Spoelstra coming up in the coaching ranks. He's already sought after and been interviewed for many jobs already, but he's still the number one for Eric. And he basically, if we want a coach like Miami's got, then we go get Chris Quinn. But I'm not very big on that. In fact, I'm not that impressed with Miami in some ways. That's not who I want. I'd be more interested in going through get one of Budenholzer's disciples instead, because their offense is something that kind of we could apply to our guys and make it very interesting. The stuff they do with Antetokounmpo and Drew Holiday and those guys. So in some ways, I'm more attracted to the Milwaukee coaching tree than the Miami coaching tree. Because that is part of what, if you want a different reset in a totally different culture, we'll go get another team's number one. And Charles Lee is the number one in Milwaukee right now. And Chris Quinn is the number one in Miami right now. And I don't know. If I had to choose between the two of them, I'd pick Charles Lee. It doesn't hurt that he's very young also. That he could connect with people better in some ways, I think, in some ways. But it's crazy because he's not that much older than Thad Young. That's the crazy thing. So that's part of what we got to look at as far as things is where they come from with their coaching tree. I highly value anybody who comes from Popovich's coaching tree, and MA is from Popovich's coaching tree. And so that's why I give him a plus. The only two guys on our list that really worked under Greg Popovich are Ettore Messina and Ime Udoka, and that's very that's curious to me. So in some ways, I give them a bump up just because of their bit with Greg Popovich. So yeah, very interesting stuff. Guardian saying need to draft a good shooting draft pick that can handle the ball. I can get behind that completely. The shooting is very, very important. I think that the draft pick needs to be somebody who's known as a fill it up, already ready to go shooter. That we can't spend time developing an athletic guy into being a shooter. Masai was asked about that stuff at the press conference on Friday. Do you believe you can take anybody and develop them into being a good shooter? And he's like, oh, yeah, I think so. We can take some time. But in some ways, I'm like, I'd like them to just be a natural, somebody who just like picked up the basketball and they're just like filling it up. They're just already born that way instead of developing it. I kind of like that at this point because in some ways, we don't want to waste time. We need to get good shooting right away. And we can wait for Pascal and Scotty to get better because they're already in the time frame and the track of the schedule. But we don't really want to wait for our new guys to be getting better at shooting. We'd like to get somebody on the ground running with a good shooter already. Yeah, Nameless is saying get Jama back. All right, let's talk about Jama a little bit. Jama's interesting. He did not play any professional ball. He only played at the level of Canadian college. It is nice that he's a Canadian. That is a very much a plus in some ways. We do like that he had 2 years as the coach of 905. His coaching tree is interesting now that he's coached under Coach Casey, Coach Nurse, and Coach Kerr. He did win the championship with the Golden State Warriors last year. And like I said, he worked very closely with Andrew Wiggins. We know he's a culture fit because he's been around Toronto before, and he is very much familiar with most of our core. So there are certain things that are very attractive about him. I think that him being Canadian is the biggest one. And then the fact that he is very much somebody is known and around our system. And I don't know if he's the number one. Kenny Atkinson's really the number one out there. Since Mike Brown went to coach the Sacramento Kings from Golden State, Kerr made Kenny his number one, and Jama's maybe number two or number three. I don't know. I don't necessarily want to hire someone on sentimentality or just because they're Canadian. That's the reason part of why I don't want anything to do with Steve Nash. And I know that he probably wants nothing to do with coaching us either. But some people are already popping his name up. I didn't put him on that list because he's not really a realistic candidate, guys. In fact, we don't want Steve Nash if he did want the job. Because listen, what did he prove in Brooklyn? He couldn't coach the best guys in the league to do something in some ways. And I don't think he would have that much control. So in some ways, I think Steve's done. And like anybody who's thinking Steve Nash is just a great fit as the next coach of the Toronto Raptors, that's not true. That's not true. He isn't. Sass Anya is here. Good to see a new name in here. We're every morning, 9:30 a.m. talking the Raptors. Tomorrow, we're going to do a Monday memory, a special commemoration of today, a year ago, Scotty Barnes winning the Rookie of the Year. So tomorrow, we're going to celebrate Scotty Barnes 1 year as rookie, 1 year since he won Rookie of the Year. That's going to be our Monday memory for tomorrow. So come remember the good times of Scotty winning Rookie of the Year last year. Anya's saying, good morning, Lex and Raptor Freaks. It's Cowboy. That's right. You're on your ladies account again. Here, I like what Masai said. We need the culture back. And I agree. Let's go. Yes, culture. Who would bring culture? We want gritty, like fight, claw, tooth, like grappling, like dirty a little bit, just like gritty toughness, tenacity. Guys that are going to go fucking crazy, like Kyle Lowry dog kind of stuff. And in some ways, that kind of culture would come with Udoka. It really would. He has that kind of culture to him. It's crazy. As I read more about him, Tatum and Brown consider him the coach that they love playing for the most in their whole entire life. That says a lot. That says a lot. And if we know one thing about Ime Udoka is he's super, super competitive, and he will strive to get the best out of our players no matter what. And the more I think about it, listen, I understand there's a problem outside of things, and that's why he had to leave Boston. But if we can really, really make sure that those issues are done and there won't be any issues like that going forward, this guy really is a really good piece to come in instead. Like in some ways, some people, I saw Monique posted something on her Instagram about an expert saying that the Raptors will have a hard time meeting the level of coaching that Nick Nurse has and upgrading on it. Meanwhile, Nick Nurse will be able to upgrade his situation better. That's bullshit. Monique, that guy was full of shit that you posted on Instagram. It's kind of bullshit because I think that Nick Nurse is going to have a hard time finding a situation that'll be better than the Raptors, honestly. If he goes to Houston, that ain't better than the Raptors. You crazy. If he goes to the Lakers even, I don't think that's better than the Raptors, even though they're still in the playoffs and they're playing right now. We could get MA, and that would be possibly better than Nick Nurse. So there you go. I mean, I think I really am like I know I was saying Earl Watson yesterday, but in some ways I'm getting more on the Udoka train. I really am. The more research I did yesterday, the more I figured this out. Some people have like described Eme Udoka as very soft spoken, very charismatic, but very like forthright. And he's not like a very brash, like kind of aggressive guy like I thought. It's just that he's very suave and he's very calculated and he's got a very nice delivery in some ways also, even though he's very fiery and very much that kind of coach. So in some ways he's been mischaracterized by this whole situation, that it's just like the situation is bad, but in some ways who he is not exactly who I thought he was earlier this year when we talked a lot about him when his scandals came up. So the more I actually read about him, the more I am impressed of Adoka. Daddy's saying, your mention of Patrick Mutombo yesterday, the more I think about it, he may be exactly what this team needs. More of a Jeff Van Gundy-esque style. Yeah. Nobody likes playing for Thibodeau in New York, but he's getting results for the Knicks. He's holding their feet to the fire and holding them accountable. And that's why they don't like playing for him. He's an old school coach that demands things of his team. And in some ways, we don't need a player's coach at this point. We need a coach that's like demanding, that really is strict and really wants to like get these guys going like a military would, like a drill sergeant would. And that's something like that's why Casey's so good too. Is he very much is that kind of guy. And with youngsters that you're trying to develop, Coach Casey was a drill sergeant. He was tough on the players. When he was here as our coach in Toronto, that was one of the best things about him is he was just a hard-nosed, tough ass coach. So that's kind of the coach we need, is that kind of guy. And Mutombo definitely fits that kind of mold. But as I said, he won't have any respect with the referees, and that will be a real detriment to us and make it hard for us to win games. We do need somebody who has clout with the referees in the NBA. Jimmy's saying everyone needs to be better. They are kind of lucky Nick was the scapegoat. Every downfall wasn't Nick's fault. We might see other coach changes. Everyone needs to be better, players included. Yes, 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 and yes. In some ways, the murmurs I'm hearing is they are going to clean house on our coaching staff. That is not going to be any of them probably still around. That this new coach, if it's not one of them, they're going to be coming in with totally different people, and there's going to be a totally different staff. I'd like to keep some people, can keep them come over and stuff. I don't know how things go with McKechnie. I'm sure McKechnie just stays because we do need Alex McKechnie. But yeah, I wonder about who all will be gone with Nick Nurse, and are we going to pick one of them to be our coach still? I'm not against it. If you ask me right now, my top 3 candidates to be the next coach of the Raptors are Earl Watson, Ime Udoka, and Jerry Stackhouse. Those are my 3 favorite candidates, and the best ones for us going forward are those 3 guys. Now, and filling out a top 5, I'd probably put Patrick Mutombo 4th, and then maybe I don't know. In some ways, Frank Vogel is attractive just because he has so much experience and he has that clout that I've already talked about, and he has won everywhere he's gone for the most part. So in some ways, but he's just such a weird fit that I'm not totally with it. I kind of like Charles Lee in some ways, just because he's very interesting as a young, hip, kind of up and coming kind of guy. And I can tell he works really hard. The fact that he has such a buzz around him coming from nowhere is very interesting and is kind of attractive in some ways. So let's see. Yeah, I agree. Nick was the scapegoat, but it had to be that way. We don't want to have a lot of damage. It's like Masai said, we don't want to burn the whole house down. We just got to take little pieces. He said it even. He said it in the press conference. He said, like you guys know, you don't want to tear it all down. You want to take one piece and switch it and come in. I was like, these motherfuckers listening to us. This is something I've been saying all year against all the people that want to rebuild our team. You don't want to destroy the whole thing and start all from scratch. And he said that very, very plainly on Friday, that it's like you want to take pieces out and plug them in and try that before you want to just tear it all down altogether. And that's what people are saying. Now they see that we fired our coach, and all the trolls and all the negative ninnies and all the people from other nations acting like Raptors fans are telling us fire Ujiri now, get rid of Fred now. They want us to continue to destroy. And that's why as Raptors nation, we should be anti that. It's like we want to do minimal changes, seriously, because our team is very good and other people know that. And that's why they want us to strike it all down and start over, because they know we have a lot of good things going and they're scared of it. and they'd rather us continue to destroy before we get it to turn around and we start kicking ass again. So that's what they want. They want us to make the mistake of destroying too far. And that's why everybody who's saying fire Masai, get rid of Fred. Shut the fuck up. Seriously. We just fired a coach. That's the first thing we're going to do. We're going to try a new coach, and then we'll tinker with it. We don't need to make any more huge changes unless it's a big franchise move, like with a player. And that's it. Nothing else. Not firing Masai, but Masai's doing a fantastic job. And honestly, Fred's not going to be going anywhere. Everybody who thinks Fred's going somewhere, you're going to be finding out. Let's see. Okay, I have to give you guys. Okay, the dock is access protected. All right. Do I have to give you guys? I got to give you guys. I think it's the kind of thing where I have to give you permission to come in here. All right. I see that you guys have put in a request. I'm going to go ahead and share it. Actually, you know what? Let me see if I can just change the settings so that it is like open for everyone. Let's do not that. Anyone with the link. Let's do that. Copy the link, and then I'll put it back in there, and then hopefully you guys can get through to see the thing now. Isaac, hopefully that worked now. Shirkan saying getting a Euro coach would be interesting. Maybe we can develop a scheme to get the best shooting out of this limited roster, even if we don't get shooters coming in next year. Just need some changes. Yeah, I truly believe in this. I don't believe like our shooting had to be this bad. I really do think that part of it was that he did not set them up for success. He did not utilize them in the right ways. It seemed like we were taking a lot of bad shots with people doubling us or coming at us, and we weren't working to better open shots. Now, sure, they missed open shots too, but there are schemes that they could have done better. They could have utilized the guys in their talents better to get better open shots. And I know that that's for sure that Nick was not. Like in some ways, he was pulling punches. He wasn't really full on extending the punch. He was like, ugh, kind of that. Now, I'm not very interested in those Euro coaches. In fact, those guys were interviewed in the last round of interviews. And the only reason why they're on the list is because they were known as interview candidates for Masai in the last cycle when we fired Casey. So it may be that we're at a place in our franchise that we're not even considering Messina or Soronis, and that they're just on there because they were known candidates that the Raptors interviewed from before, that we know that we had interest in before. And that's all. It may not be very realistic because where we are with our franchise at this point, it doesn't make any sense to bring in us an older Messina at this point. So it's kind of like that. It's kind of like that. He's 63, so let's see. G saying would love Sergio back. Hang on, jumped. Would love Sergio back in some capacity. Well, I don't think he'd come back other than being the head coach because he's already been here, done that assistant coach thing for 3 years, and he won a championship while he was here. So in some ways, I think Sergio's just on there just because of his history with us and his success over there. And it is a possibility, but I don't think it's very likely. Like I said, I don't think any of those 3 European coach candidates that are on that spreadsheet are very likely to be the person that we're going to hire. I mean, that's kind of like, it's just like Jama and Patrick and Sergio. They're former coaches from our team, and we kind of like, oh, let's bring them back. Well, in some ways, that's not necessarily the best decision in some ways. Nameless saying, bro, go get Jama back yesterday. Well, just because he's Canadian, you want to have a Canadian coach? Well, Scott Foster won't respect him. Trust me, Tony Brothers, he's going to have to earn a whole bunch of respect with all those referees. And do we want to go through like 2 or 3 years of a young coach not getting good calls just because the refs don't respect him? That is a big part of this that we need to think about. And in some ways, I want a respected coach right up the bat because it will help us with the referees. And Jama's not got that. Leslie saying, good morning, Raptor Freak. Maybe for this core of guys, Jerry Stackhouse would be a good choice because he helped to develop the former bench mob. He also won the 905 chip. Yeah, he's proven winner, and he's a proven player that's very respected around the league as far as how long he played in the league. He played 18 years as an NBA pro. That's nothing to sneeze at. And the fact that, people like Scotty will know who Jerry Stackhouse is, and they'll put him in higher esteem. And in some ways, Jerry Stackhouse is very much like Mutombo. He's very hard-edged. And I know, because I have a crazy story about Stackhouse. I have a very close friend. His cousin was Mikey Moore, who played for the Pistons. a former NBA player, power forward center, Mikey Moore out of South Carolina. And he played with Stackhouse on the team when they were at pros together in Pistons. And he told me the story about when the day at practice when Jerry punched out his teammate in practice. Yeah, there would be crazy stuff like that. Jerry Stackhouse is a fiery person, and you don't fuck with him apparently. Like if you get him mad, you better get out of there. And that's the thing. In some ways, he has a hard edge in the way that like Adoka has, or like Patrick Mutombo, and that may be good at this point. Like in some ways, the players may be scared of him. Let's just put it that way. They may be a little bit scared and in awe and respecting Jerry Stackhouse. Now, I hope his personality would go fine with people like Freddie and Pascal and OG and Jakob. And I'm sure it probably would. They would respect him. So that he's an interesting choice. And that's why he's one of my top three, is because I know he has clout. I know he's a winner. I know he's familiar with our team. And I know that he has bonds with some of the people around our team already. So that could be very interesting. Monique's here. Good to see superfan Monique Lawrence. Good morning, everyone. Start the hashtag chop wood, carry water. My top three choices are Watson, Adrian Griffin, and Mutombo, but go with the flow regardless. See, those aren't bad choices. All from in-house, pretty much. Adrian Griffin, Patrick Mutombo, Earl Watson. You know, I love Earl Watson in some ways, but he is a gamble. I'm starting to realize that in some ways he is a gamble. That you know, it may work in all kinds of ways. He's very looks like a good idea, but in some ways he's a gamble because, like we said, he's not a proven winner. And that the thing about Earl that's amazing too is, like I said, he's been touched by so many great coaches in his whole entire career, whether it's at UCLA as a player under Hubie Brown, you know, working with Pat Riley in Miami. You know, he's been around so many of the great coaches in the history of the NBA that in some ways he's like got a library full of just amazing coaching experience from being around such greats. That in some ways that's super attractive to me about Earl Watson. And obviously, you know, in some ways maybe he isn't a good pick because he is a player's coach like Nick was, and maybe he won't be as hard-assed on them as he could. Now, if it's a pairing of him and Rico Hines, maybe Rico can be that drill sergeant and that tough, like, you guys need to do this. You guys need to run this out. You guys need to make your free throws. You need to make this. You need to do this. And Rico could be that hard-nosed guy with him as a team. You know, Earl's the head coach, the guy drawing up all the plays, but maybe Rico Hines is that tough, stern disciplinarian to make the team do the stuff and get real serious. I think that that's really important, that we have that kind of like strict kind of coach at this point, because Nick was so not strict. That would be a really big difference to the culture change and shock the system. As Masai put it on Friday, he needs to shock the system with a big change. And maybe getting rid of complacency is by getting rid of a player's coach and replacing them with a disciplined development coach like a Casey. And that's what I'm saying. Some of these guys on this list are like that. So, you know, in some ways, Earl Watson's maybe too much like Nick Nurse as far as being too nice to the players and too much of a friend to them. In some ways, they need a hard edge, like I'm the coach, and you need to talk to me like I'm the coach, instead of like I'm your buddy. Let's go read books. You know, that in some ways needs to be part of the change. Let's see. Tom Duke saying that does look good, having Larry and Scotty at this Leaf game. Masai will make decisions one player move only once he gets a coach on the scene. That's right. Good morning to you, Tom Duke. West Coast Raptor Freak president, Tom Duke, holding it down in BC. I hope the weather is nice out there, my good friend, Tom. Yes. I really love that Scotty was at that game last night. When I realized he was in Tampa at that game, I was like, this dude's going above and beyond for MLSE. And then seeing him with Larry, that was fantastic. So knowing that Larry Tannenbaum and him have a close relationship, this is very good for the future. And Scotty being our franchise player forever. It is. It's really, really super good. And the fact that he's a Leaf fan and that he helped the Leafs win against the Lightning to take a 2-1 lead in their series, that's something real good. Toronto loves Scotty. Let me tell you right now, Scotty, you made a big part of Toronto love you even more last night. You really did. Jimmy saying Ime Udoka all day. I really feel anyone else is a huge downgrade from Nick. You know, I can't disagree with this. In some ways, Jimmy is right. You know, Nick's at a certain level of coaching, and this is why people are laughing at us. They're saying, why would they fire Nick Nurse? He's one of the best coaches in the league. Well, we didn't necessarily want to. Nick's forced our hand to have to with his bullshit. And it sucks because in some ways I wanted to keep going with him. But Jimmy's right. Like, if we want a hotshot young coach that comes in and makes the finals in his rookie year as a head coach, that's M.A. Adoka. And that's the same thing that Nick did. So in some ways, that's right. It's a parallel move at least, if not, hopefully a slight upgrade. So yeah, I'm with you. In some ways, you look at these other guys on this list, Frank Vogel for Nick Nurse. No, man, I'm not about that. That seems like a fucking horrible downgrade. Kenny Atkinson, what the fuck? Charlotte was going to hire him last year. We don't want Kenny Atkinson. It really has to be somebody like kind of like with swagger or something that's energy to them that like excites us. It can't be fucking Rex Kalamian. I'm sorry, Rex Kalamian is not exciting. I'm sorry. Messina would be exciting, but it'd be a little weird, and I don't know if the fit would work. Jerry Stackhouse could be exciting. Earl Watson could be exciting. We definitely know Ma would be exciting, and Charles Lee could be very exciting as being our coach also. So that is a factor. It's like, what is it going to look like perceptive wise? We're trading Nick Nurse for Frank Vogel. Fuck that shit. Fuck that shit. No way, bro. No way. Guardian Transit saying, I've been studying NBA draft prospects, and Corey Hawkins, is probably a shooter in the draft. I like that. Corey Hawkins. I'm going to remember that name. You guys keep bringing up the name Hawkins. I remember. I'm all about that. Anya's saying, or Cowboys saying, everybody smash that like button. Thank you, Cowboy. Tomorrow, Monday Memory, Scotty Barnes wins Rookie of the Year a year ago. Today, we'll be remembering it tomorrow and honoring Mr. Scotty Barnes for being a Rookie of the Year for a year now. Yeah, and he'll be done. They're going to announce it probably this week. Who's the new Rookie of the Year? Probably Paulo Banchero. Guardian saying, Ma is my hands down pick. See, a lot of people really like this, and I think it's right. Now, there is competition to get him. The Rockets are trying to get him. The Rockets are actually kind of interested in Sam Cassell. They are interviewing him today, actually. The Philadelphia 76ers have given Sam Cassell permission to go and interview with the Houston Rockets. Now, of course, we know Sam Cassell is a 3-time NBA champion, 2 times as a player as a Houston Rocket in the mid-90s. So there is a lot of really interesting kind of connection with Sam Cassell and the Rockets and him possibly being their potential new head coach there. So, there's, of course, they talk about Nick Nurse has already got that job. Well, we don't know. Sam Cassell could be the new coach of the Houston Rockets also. In some ways, he makes more sense because he was a former player, and those youngsters in Houston need to respect somebody, and especially somebody who won 2 championships with that franchise. So I would say that in some ways, the 3 top candidates for the Houston Rockets coaching vacancy are Cassell, Nick Nurse, and Ime Udoka. Now, we are a much more attractive situation than the Rockets. If there's going to be like a comparison between Udoka wanting to go to the Rockets or the Raptors, we're much more prepared to do playoff noise and make a big statement. And he knows that. He's seen these guys and he knows this team. It'd be very interesting to be available, to be a fly on the wall, to hear these interviews with these coaches and hear what their plans would be for how they would coach our team. Like, I would love to be sitting in the room listening to Udoka talk about how he would use Scotty and OG and Pascal and things like that. I'd love to hear what Earl Watson says he would do different than Nick Nurse. I would love to see a presentation by Jerry Stackhouse to Masai Ujiri and Bobby Webster about how he would do what he would do with his team. It'd be very interesting, very, very cool. Fun guy saying, yes, my guy, love Earl, but I want something completely fresh. I think so does Masai and everyone. Something far from Nick Nurse's stream of the last 5 years. Well, if you look at my spreadsheet, fun guy, you'll see that everybody who has Nurse's name on coached under is got a yellow. And that really is a warning that's saying this is somebody who's coached with Nick Nurse. And if we want to go in a totally different direction, you don't necessarily want that yellow. And that's what I'm saying. So, those names, the coached under, are very interesting. In some ways, you like some of those influences like Popovich, Spoelstra, Budenholzer, Thibodeau, Donovan. These are things that are very interesting and tell you about coaching styles of some of these guys, especially the young guys like Charles Lee coaching under Mike Budenholzer. So yeah, Monique's saying if I were watching the playoffs, I'd want someone else's brand new to win it. I am totally with you on this. Adriana asked me yesterday, who do you want to win the championship right now, Lex? I was like, well, I was kind of hoping for the Clippers and the Grizzlies on the West side, but they're kind of like getting in trouble in their series. I don't mind the Suns. If the Suns win the championship this year, I won't be upset. That would be kind of fun in some ways because they've never won a championship as a franchise. In some ways, I'm rooting for the teams that have never won. Sacramento Kings are another team I'm definitely rooting for. Denver Nuggets, I can get behind them winning too. But I don't want anybody in the East to win at this point. I'm not interested in a Boston championship. I'm not interested in a Milwaukee championship. I'm not interested in a New York or a Philadelphia championship. No, I don't even really want Miami to win either, even though Kyle's there. So yeah, anybody but the East. Let's basically say that at this point. I want the West to win, baby. Jimmy's saying I get Knicks. I get Knicks at fault, but let's not forget the countless bricked layups and threes all season, and the fact we had the triple team centers till we got Yak. It wasn't all Nick. Oh, for sure, for sure. But we knew that, and we've been saying this, Jimmy. It's not totally fair to lump it all on him, and I know, but I'm going to do it anyway because in some ways you want damage control. In these kind of situations, you don't want it to be worse, and you want a bunch of targets and get rid of a whole bunch of people. Nah, lump it all on one person, give them the patsy status, and boom, move on. In some ways, you can really lump it all on the coach and make them the fall guy, even if it's not fair. And you're exactly right. These guys did not play as well as they could have. But in some ways, you can turn it around and make the argument that he didn't motivate them to. And that's part of the problem, too. So it's a little bit of a kind of like, yeah, it's one thing eats the other, comes around, the chicken or the egg. But, in some ways, it is Nick's fault. He was in charge. And, man, he didn't seem like he was coaching our team right, for sure. There's some weird shit that happened this year. Infamous is saying, morning, freaks. I believe this shows that load management does not work. Perfect example, the Clippers. Booyah. Wow. He just hit out of the park. Infamous just, wow, speaking the truth. That truth hit hard right there. Exactly. They've been load managing Kawhi for how many years now? And this motherfucker still doesn't show up for the playoffs. That's what I'm saying. In fact, Greg's argument on the Gubstown Clink is that you got to work the callus. You got to work as hard as possible, as much as possible, and then you'll be stronger and you won't be fragile. You won't be getting hurt in the playoffs because you busted your ass and you became hardened as a player the whole entire season. Yeah, I can get behind this. In fact, this is the kind of way, maybe this is the softness of the league that I'm talking about that isn't so good for the league right now. But bam, wow, what a great statement, Infamous. Maybe the comment of the day, because that totally makes sense. Proves that load management does not actually work. Infamous is saying, I know everybody wants to push the narrative, but I don't believe the nut job hit by Brooks was intentional. I didn't actually see it. All I saw is that he hit LeBron in the nuts and he got thrown out of the game. I mean, they did it to James a couple nights ago for the same exact thing. It seemed like it was similar. So if they're going to do that to James Harden, they're going to have to do it to Dylan Brooks also. So I just wish that they had suspended Embiid for kicking Claxton because I felt like that was really should have been suspended, but justice was served because he couldn't play anyway because he was hurt. So in some ways, it all works out anyway. Sure, saying, speaking of the Lakers game, the shouting kids were in full effect, and it was more skilled double screams, but the Lakers were cool about it. Shot around the league average at 80%. Pro baller skills. So there were shrieking kids at the Laker game last night trying to mess with their free throws like DeAndre DeRozan, and it didn't work. Hey, there you go. In some ways, you just really got to tune it all out. G saying Raps beat a fully healthy Sixers and Bucks team to get to the Golden State Warriors. Is anyone going to talk about all the injuries this season for whomever wins the chip? Exactly. And this is something that happens every fucking year. This has happened since I started watching basketball in the 80s. The Lakers are missing Kareem and Magic, and boom, somebody wins against them. People lose players and they get hurt all the time. That's part of the luck and the strategy of building towards a championship. You have to have a good team that's deep. If you miss somebody like Ja Morant or Steven Adams, you need to have other guys that will step up and play big time in their absence. And that's something that's very important in the NBA is you need deep just because somebody may get knocked out and you're going to need somebody to step up and be there. And that's sometimes not very lucky. You could lose very important players like Durant and Klay Thompson. but every single year people get hurt, and that it changes the path and how easy it is or how difficult it is for teams to get to the highest plateau and win into Larry O'Brien. And that you can make this argument every single fucking year that you were helped because this person was injured and this person was injured. Yeah, if they're going to do that with our year, they better do it with every single damn year otherwise too. Because all those Cleveland Cavaliers, Golden State Warriors finals that happened with LeBron and them, there were people missing in those games too. And those were very much part of what determined who won. Let's see. Infamous is saying, I think the problem with bringing in Masai is bringing in Adoka is Masai getting upper management to sign off on the hiring. I don't think that's a problem at all. I really don't. I think that, listen, if they do certain things as far as like make sure the due diligence that MA is reformed and that this kind of behavior will not happen in MLSE, then they shouldn't have any problems. Larry Tenenbaum is not going to be a stick on this. No, I don't think that this will be a problem. He's really going to have to trust them to for sure. Like Masai's going to really have to talk to him. But like I said, their personal relationship will really help in this whole situation. And the fact that he can be very open and upfront and frank with him ahead of time, that'll really help. Plus, once again, Masai's older than MA. And in some ways, he may look up to him as like an older brother. You know, they're both from Nigeria and they very much do have very strong connections together. In fact, their stories are similar. They very, very similar kind of like stories with the NBA and their careers and how they've rose and ascended to where they've gotten. In some ways, they have a lot in common. So that is a big, big strength with this. I don't think it'd take much for Masai to sell Larry Tenenbaum and their owners on getting him. In fact, they will see the results of him and understand that reward versus the risk is very high. And that was a category I had on the spreadsheet in the beginning, but I was like, how can I really assess this? I was trying to think about risk reward. And the risk was really like, all right, who of these guys will not fit? Possibly there's a risk that they won't fit with the team or be right for the team. And is there really a big, huge reward if they do and they're like successful with what they can do and their powers as a coach? And the risk reward with MA was high on both ends. It's like the risk is a little bit high just because of his baggage and worries, but the reward with him was the highest too. I had him marked at a 10 out of 10. The reward that possibly if things work out with him are very, very high also. I think it was like 6 and 10. I had a 6 rating for his risk and a 10 rating for his reward. Let's see. Nako saying, in a vacuum, I'd probably place Golden State as the best coaching tree. They've been great at both winning and developing. Well, you say that, but Gerald, you don't know the whole history of the Golden State coaching tree because it is a branch off of the Popovich San Antonio stream. That is the biggest tree of all of them in the whole entire NBA. I'm sorry. You can take Budenholzer and Kerr, and they are branches off of Popovich's tree. So it's not even that tree, bro. The Golden State tree, in some ways, is a branch off of San Antonio's tree. So it's the San Antonio tree, actually, because it has the whole Golden State and Milwaukee tree on it. Because Budenholzer and Kerr were under Popovich first. And that's the whole thing. It's like this guy to this guy to this guy. And that's why it's the Spurs tree, actually, because the Spurs tree encompasses all of the Milwaukee tree and the Golden State tree, not to mention M.A. Adoka is on that tree also because he was in San Antonio also. Josh Monroe's here. Good to see Josh Monroe. A lot of people are not on board with in-house candidates for fear of same voice or vibes. They want someone to push a different system and not afraid to switch roles and go in different directions. I agree with this. I think this is true. And in some ways, that's the downside of somebody like Adrian Griffin or Earl Watson, is it may be too close to what we've been doing already. And that some people are just like, want a clean slate. We want to start in a whole different kind of way. Now, the benefits of keeping like Griffin or Watson are obviously continuity as far as we know that they are already known quantities on our team and how they interact with the players will fit. And that's very nice to have as far as like not worrying about that. Because, you know, you bring in any other personalities from outside the team and you don't know if these personalities will clash. So that's kind of the risk and reward with that is like MA could very much not get along with somebody like Siakam. It could be very weird. So we don't know, but I'm with you on this. I think this is right. I was kind of like, do we want somebody in-house? I mean, it makes sense for continuity in what I just said, But in some ways, we really do want to completely rip that Band-Aid off and start with a whole different kind of regime that doesn't even touch anything that Nick Nurse did. And I see what you're saying, Josh. Thanks for the comment. MSJ saying, yeah, I don't think we need a players coach at all. Players like Precious need someone who will demand better play. Yeah, some of these guys really thrive in structure. I can tell. Scotty's one of them. Freddie's one of them. These guys were crying out for more structure last year. And in some ways, it wasn't serving them to not have the structure. Scotty wants to get up in the morning. He sees an itinerary of this is what I'm doing today, and this is what I'm working on. This is what I'm going to do. He likes everything blocked out and organized. And in some ways, that's what we need from our coach more, is to be very, very organized, everything figured out and blocked out. So these guys know exactly what they're supposed to be doing. There's no questions. There's no ambiguity. And they can really focus their really intense, good talents on the focus of the main goal of winning as a basketball team over and over again. And that's a big, big difference that we need coming forward this year. I think you're right that these guys are professionals and they're mature and they're good guys. And I think that in some ways they would really thrive and enjoy having a more harder like temperament of a coach telling them what to do. You know, Casey is like, honestly, he would be perfect if he wasn't retiring. If we could bring Dwayne Casey right back, I would be all about it. But it's not going to happen. So in a way, what do? You get an acolyte of his. Rex Kalamian? No, he's too old. Jerry Stackhouse. There you go. There you go. Cool Cat saying, good morning, Raptor Free crew. Join late. We'll have to watch the beginning later on. I like what you said about M.A. Doka. Cool. Awesome. Yeah, I mean, listen, Cool Cat, I spent like 4 or 5 hours yesterday reading up on all the candidates and really, really getting to know my stuff on them. And the more I read about MA, the more I was impressed. And the more I was kind of like, this guy would be really good for us. We could get this to happen. Summer Lowe saying Gleason and Griffin need to go. I think I'm with you. Definitely Trevor Gleason. I mean, listen, it didn't totally work, the flex offense from Australia. And I'm with you, Summer. Now, Griffin, I think he's lined up to get that Detroit job, that he's probably going to be the head coach of the Detroit Pistons next season. That's why I'm not really thinking that he's going to be a really high candidate for us, even though he would work and it would fit. But obviously, he is so close to Nick. He's probably the closest of all the candidates to Nick. And in some ways, that's not what we want. We don't want anything close to Nick. And that's why, yeah, I agree with Summer. Those two G coaches got to go. I'm with them. All right, Omari's here. Morning, freaks. Rest in peace, Nick. I think we should get Kyle Lowry to coach our team. Omari Parsons. He can help you find a place to rent or live in the 905 or the 416. Check out Omari Parsons in the phone book. If you need a place to stay, he can help you find the way. So just look up Omari in the phone book. He is a realtor in the Toronto area. All right, there's my spreadsheets. See, hopefully you guys can click on them. Let's just try clicking on one of them. See if you can open it right up. You guys are looking at my spreadsheet. If you have any questions about the information I put on the spreadsheet, just fire away and we'll talk about it. Here's another new name. Love to see new names. Kwiku Ghana. Good to see you here every morning, 9:30 a.m. talking regular Raptors news for the day, live every day. You can come and get your comments read every single day. I read every single one of them. Who do you think leaves out of Pascal, Siakam, and Van Vliet? All right. If we have to make a move this summer, like a DeMar DeRozan for Kawhi Leonard kind of move, I think it will be Siakam. I don't think that we will trade Fred. In some ways, Siakam is very attractive right now to a lot of people around the league. In fact, Portland in particular is very interested in Siakam at this point. You know, if we can put him together and get another really big player coming in the other way that maybe fits us in a better way as far as like his style of play with Scotty and Freddie and stuff, that may be good. I mean, Siakam is the second most important player from our championship year, but in some ways, getting rid of Nick this week has really signaled that we are ready to cut ties with our championship year, and that this is going to be a different kind of era of building towards the championship. And it won't necessarily if Fred's around for the second championship, sure, we can say it's a dynasty, but that is the person we need for sure, and maybe Pascal also. But if you made me choose, Mr. Ghana, I would say Siakam, trade him and get some really high level talent that's comparable to him. Don't trade him for like 2 or 3 guys. Trade him one-on-one, straight up one guy for one guy. If you have to do 2 for 2, that's fine, like the Kawhi deal. But it's really like you want to trade Siakam for one really good star that's comparable to him, but has a different skill set that will fit with our guys a little bit better. I think that that may be what it is. And even Masai kind of hinted at it on Friday when he said that anything that's off the table, he will trade anybody except for Scotty. And in some ways, that's what I thought he meant when he said that. Fiercely saying empathy in the sense of using judgment when players. Hang on and jump. I want to make sure I read this correctly because I want to make sure I get what Fiercely's saying. Empathy in the sense of using judgment when players struggle and address them privately before throwing them under the bus at press conference. Yes, that's something coaches should never do. In fact, I wonder about that college that he got his PhD in sports leadership from, Nick Nurse. Because in some ways, doing what you did to Precious, to Chris Boucher, to Gary Trent Jr. the last 2 years, throwing them under the bus publicly in your press conferences, that's the way you're going to get something out of them. Well, to mixed degrees, but it's not pretty, and I don't like it. It doesn't look good. And us as fans never like this. And I think that's what Fiercey's saying. All right, so your empathy means not throwing the players under the bus in interviews. I'm all about that. I love that. And I'm with you. We need more empathy in that way. Not necessarily empathy like, I feel sorry for you. You're not going to have to practice today. No, you're going to practice today and you can work harder than ever. But we have empathy. We won't throw you under the bus. Cool Cat saying we just need to retool, not tear down. We're not that far from competition. Our shooting also needs legs. The aggressive defensive scheme took a toll. Yeah. And that'll be something that maybe gets dialed down a little bit, but is still present and still we're a very good defensive team. But the scheme could be totally different instead of chasing everybody around like crazy with this crazy cascading defense where you overcommit and try and steal. And then everybody has to chase and make up for that overcommitment and kind of like, oh, chase it all around. And then they're still getting a corner three. Yeah, fuck all that shit. Play straight up. Stay at home. Let's use the ultra good, talented, athletic players on the Raptors roster to play a straight man-to-man up one-on-one and stop doubling so much and stop gambling so much in the passing lanes where people have to scramble and try and cover up other people's mistakes. And that'll be a big difference. You could change that real quick, and you may see a totally different kind of defensive scheme that works still. And meanwhile, we're saving energy to use it on the offensive end instead of going all out on the defensive end. This has been a huge gripe that a lot of Raptors fans have had about Nick Nurse's defensive scheme, that it tires them the hell out. So they have no energy to be good on the offensive end. So I'm with you, Cool Cat. Maybe we dial down the defensive thing and make it more smart and more economical with their energy and effective in that way. And then, boom, all of a sudden we have better results on the offensive end, because we're not wearing everybody out chasing the ball around on the other. Wayne's saying, please note, Udoka can only work with a given system. He was given a team and was failing before intervention in late November. He adhered to the system after, and the new coach adhered from the start. Equals success. You know, that's true. I remember that the year that he coached for the Celtics, they didn't start well. They had a really bad start, and they kind of righted the ship mid-season and got into position to get to where they got to. In some ways, that's impressive to me because it kind of shows that he will make changes as needed if they're not working with the team. And that's actually something I would say that's actually good. Now, you're saying that he was given a system. Now, in his coaching tree, he comes from Popovich. He comes from Brett Brown. Remember, he was actually an assistant coach for the Sixers. When we beat them in the championship year in that round, he was sitting on the bench with Brett Brown and Sam Cassell in that series when Kawhi hit the shot. And then, of course, MA did actually coach under Steve Nash for a little bit of time in Brooklyn also. Now, obviously, when he coached in Boston, he was never an assistant coach for them. He came in as the head coach, but he was very much under the tutelage of Brad Stevens. So there's a couple of different influences for him as far as Popovich, Brett Brown, Steve Nash, and Brad Stevens. So, you know, I'm not really sure exactly if you could pinpoint like MA as far as like he can only work with a given system. I don't know if that's totally true. He may be more flexible than you think just because of all the varied coaching influences that he's had around him. Nameless is saying Gleason definitely needs to go. When has Australia ever won FIBA? Oh, yeah, never. That's just an unnecessary jab at the great country of Australia. Come on now, Nameless. Well, I feel bad for Trevor because in some ways the areas that he has expertise in, we failed in majorly. The offense and the end of game situations. It's too bad. But he's going to be fine. He has an amazing coaching career in Australia, and he's had very, very much success his whole entire life. Just a little bit of a tough time with the Raptors. It's too bad. Quick is saying, who you keeping? I'm keeping as many Raptors as possible right now. I don't want to move too many guys. Now, guys are going to leave because of free agency, like Gary, possibly. Guys may get traded. We may lose some guys because we just lose guys like Thad Young. And that's how we bring in the influx of new guys. But the core guys, the guys that are under contract for next season, I don't want to move too many of them. If we make one major move with one of them, that should probably be enough. If we want to really look at how we tinkered with things in 2018, we fired our head coach and we made a huge move with DeMar DeRozan. And then boom, that was good enough to get us on track to going towards our first championship. So in some ways, people are making fun of us for firing our coach of the year, the coach that got us to the championship. Well, what if we fucking do it all over again? Hire Emi Udoka, make a big trade with one of our superstars that gets another guy who puts us even higher a chance to win, just like Kawhi did. And boom, we have another season like that season in 2019, and we win our second championship 5 years after we win our first one, which is very Spurs-like. Trust me, it's very, very Spurs-like. Let's see. Cool Cat saying, my coach of choice is whoever Masai chooses. Scotty being a Toronto man's over there in Tampa. She loves it. Yeah, Scotty showing his allegiance, showing he is Toronto man. He is 416. And we love you, Scotty. Thank you for bringing good luck to the Toronto Maple Leafs last night in a great overtime victory, winning. And now they're 2-1 over the Tampa Bay Lightning in their first round matchup in the NHL. Fantastic stuff. You've got a lot more hockey fans now. Scotty Barnes as of last night. That's for sure. Monique saying, interesting take from Stephen A. Smith regarding a potential replacement for Nick Nurse. Phil Handy, anyone? Is that who Stephen A. Smith is saying, Phil Handy? Yeah, see, once again, I don't know if he's the disciplinarian kind of coach. He seems like a very casual players coach kind of guy. He's a cool guy. He's the guy that like Kawhi likes to have around, or LeBron. They like having him around. He's a specialist coach. He's not really like a head coach kind of guy. If he was going to be a head coach in the NBA, he probably would have been already. Handy is actually kind of older. He's not like a young guy. Let me see what Phil Handy is at his age. He's okay, he's 51. He's not super old. He looks older than he is. But yeah, I think I've always thought of him as a specialty coach. It's not really like a head coach kind of guy. It's just kind of a guy who comes in and like on the side teaches guys skills and kind of is like he's kind of a player's coach too. So I think he'd be too nice. And that's some ways we don't want that. We don't want that. A fun guy saying, yes, Lex. Now you've seen it from my perspective. You can't go from godlike coach like Nurse to someone levels and levels less established. We need a badass and someone fresh. We need somebody to make things exciting. So we're looking at the 15 coaches on my spreadsheet, and I love it. Who's here watching it? Anonymous Dinosaur is here looking at the spreadsheet with me. Who jumps out that makes you excited? Udoka, of course. But the rest of them, I don't know. Charles Lee is kind of exciting in some ways. But really, Frank Vogel just does not do it. I'm telling you, even Sam Cassell is not that exciting to me as far as a coach, or Kenny Atkinson. Kalamian's definitely the least exciting on this list. Chris Quinn would be interesting and could be exciting, but I don't really want a little Spoelstra coaching our team. Some people will say, oh, no, you want a Spoelstra? Get a Spoelstra. No, we don't want a Spoelstra. We want somebody new and original, and not necessarily like the Spoelstra, Let's see what else you guys are saying here. Nameless is saying, a lot of people consider Jama to be the real talent maker of Toronto, and when he left, it was never the same. Ooh, interesting. That's an interesting thing. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know enough. Who knows enough? It's Masai. And obviously he knows Jama very well, and that'll be interesting. Also, we got to wonder who's going to actually come and interview for this job. Who wants it? Some people have said some of these people that are on this list may not totally want to leave their position and where they're at. Like, I'm sure Jama would want to be the head coach of the Raptors if the job was offered to him. Like, that's a better thing for his career. But just like Kenny Atkinson declined the Charlotte Hornets, there's no guarantees that the people that we think we would want for the job are actually the people that will come and take it. Even MA. Some people have said, well, what if Adoka doesn't want to coach in Toronto? That could be a possibility, although I'm probably sure it's not, just because of his friendship with Masai. He definitely probably would be intrigued and love to coach here. Trust me. But we don't know. We don't know out of all these candidates who is actually realistic. Like Sam Cassell may not want to coach here. I don't want Sam Cassell coaching this team. He's from the Sixers and he's with Doc Rivers. In some ways, I love Sam because of Florida State, and I come from Florida State, and so does Scotty. But I don't really want like. In some ways, you wonder about like, will they be fully with us? I mean, Ma in some ways has a chip on his shoulder against the Celtics for firing him. I'm sure, and that could be really good to have on our team as far as an Atlantic Division rival. As much as we worry about Nick Nurse going to an Eastern Conference team, oh, I'm sure Celtics Nation would not be happy to see Ime Udoka as the next head coach of the Raptors. So, in some ways, that's very attractive. That it would be scary to the Celtics Nation that we got their old coach that took them to the finals. Yeah, in some ways, that makes it even more attractive to get Ime Udoka. So, let's see. Shir Khan saying, if we get MA, we also have to hire an old lady grandma type following him around. Around the Raptors facility to give him a smack on the back of the head every time he looks or glares at an attractive coworker. All right, you're getting a dunk, Shir Khan. I don't even know if you've gotten a dunk before. This is going to be your first one, but this is so good, Shir Khan. I love this. I can just picture this old woman, too, and like who she would be there with him, and she'd be like, ah! So good, Shir Khan. Rookie of the year coming through with the dunk of the day. That's awesome. Cool Cat saying, I think Nick Nurse is going to the Lakers. After living in Toronto with his varied interests, Cali is the next market with Hollywood. I really hate this. You know, if he does this, I'm going to blame Clutch and Rich Paul and LeBron James for meddling with this league. It's going to look so dirty that they fucked up his career here in Toronto just so he could come and coach LeBron and the Lakers over there. Well, if he does that, so be it. I'll be saying those cheating, crappy, like LeBron should not be owning Clutch Sports Management if he's going to be manipulating the league like this to steal the Raptors coach so he can come and be his coach in the Lakers. That's fucked up. Seriously, that is not a good look. In some ways, they don't want this to happen because it will very much look like that from the outside. So in some ways, I may say that if they do it, I dare them to, because it's going to look real bad and it's going to cause a lot of questions. But maybe they won't do it because they know it will look really bad, the optics of it, as far as things. There's some collusion there. If that happens, if you ask me, Cool Cat, if Nick Nurse goes and coaches the Lakers, that's collusion. I'm sorry. And no ifs, ands, and buts. He sabotaged his career here on purpose to go there. That's why I think it's more likely he'll take the Houston job in some ways. He does really have a connection to Houston because he coached their G League team to a G League championship. So he knows a lot of the people in Houston. And in some ways, it's closer to Iowa. And it may make more sense for him to be there, although he's not the best fit for their roster and where they're at with their team and development. I don't have to tell them that. I'd love to see him go there. Now, if he goes to the Lakers and that does happen, we'll blame collusion. And then we'll also hopefully see more of the same dumpster fire that's always been there. And Nick Nurse will just be a part of it at this point. I don't think he'll save them in LA. Hopefully they don't get too good. Like I want them to lose very soon in the playoffs, as soon as possible, if necessary. Wayne saying, what was Nick Nurse's winning record before selected for the job? Earl is quite fine for the job. Brad Stevens is the reason for Boston's success, not Udoka. How can Boston's success be Udoka's if he's not there? These are good points by Wayne. I'm going to break them down each. Now, Nick was never a head coach in the NBA until he was a head coach of the Raptors. So he has no head coaching like record from before. His coaching record is from European leagues, other leagues around the world, and the G League, the D League, the CBA. He's coached in all those different leagues, and his winning percentage has been pretty good in all of them. And that's something that, like, if you look at the candidates that are like that in this, is somebody like maybe Sarunas is kind of like Nick because he coached a lot in Europe. I don't know who would be most like Nick as a candidate going from our list that's on the spreadsheet. It'd probably be no, it wouldn't be Rex. Rex is too old and too long around there. Maybe he's most like Sergio. He might be the most like Sergio in some ways on that list. Now, I get what you're saying about the Celtics and their success this year with Joe without M.A. Adoka kind of says something to that. But also, you got to understand that part of it is the team. It has to do with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and the makeup of that Celtics team. In some ways, yeah, you could say it's Brad Stevens, but listen, I watched how he coached that team that year, Adoka, and he's a good one. He's very good. Like in some ways, the situational stuff that he does as a coach is really sound. He's very good at motivating the guys. He's very good at getting those players to get up and play at a high level for the Celtics at that time. So I think you're kind of trying to poo-poo what Adoka did in Boston, but honestly, he did do some amazing things there, and he really did coach his ass off. And that's part of the reason why Brad Stevens had a little tear coming of his eye when he had to fire him because of what he did. That he didn't want to do that. It's very similar in a way to what's happened with Nick. In some ways, we didn't want to fire Nick, but we had to. Ma had to be fired also. So, well, maybe this makes sense to go get him. I know that maybe you're like, with that, but I know you're saying maybe in regards to like Earl Watson's winning record is not good with Phoenix, but he was thrown to the fire way younger than he should have. And he wasn't ready to be a head coach at that time. And that was part of it. Cool Cat saying for a chip. Warriors, Denver, Kings, any of those teams, I agree with Lex. No team from the East. Yeah, Cool Cat's with me too. We don't want any of these teams getting shine on our side of the pond of the conference. No, no Philly. Fuck that. We don't want to reward Joel Embiid for what he does. Fuck that. In some ways, I'm okay with Miami, but I'm not because I hate Miami Nation. And if they get more championships around their franchise, they're going to brag and be all obnoxious for a year. Trust me. We don't want the Heat to win because they'll be more obnoxious and they'll have more championships. Like they've got 4 already. Yeah, we don't need the Miami Heat getting more championships for their young franchise. No. And Celtics, hell no, we don't want the Celtics to win. And the Knicks, fuck that. Fuck that. They can have good feelings. Although if the Knicks won the championship this year, they'd be the least. I'd be the least upset about it. Although Knicks fans would be very annoying for sure. That may be the team that I would be okay with winning out of everybody in the East the most. Just because the Knicks fans have been tortured and beaten down for so long, it'd be crazy for them to win it finally all of a sudden. And I wouldn't be that upset because that kind of be rooting for. I don't want Cleveland to win though. They've won one recently, and fuck Cleveland. Cleveland's kind of our rival in some ways. They hate Toronto, so we should hate Cleveland. We don't want fucking Cleveland winning shit. Yeah. Let's see. Nameless is saying we need to elevate Rico and hire that lethal shooter dude. Yeah, lethal shooter. Yeah, he won't even use his real name. We'll have him in the bio and in the programs as assistant coach lethal shooter. And everybody like, is that dude's name? He's like the Ultimate Warrior. He changed his name legally. Oh, okay. Lethal. Hey, lethal. Hey. Cowboy saying, I think Adoka, if I spelled it correctly, would be perfect for us. Or Stackhouse. Then we would bully the league again. That's what we kind of want is like a bully coach, a guy that will get these guys to bully and be crazy. Yeah, I'm all about that. You did not spell it right, but that's okay. G saying a strict coach would take the pressure off Fred and Pascal as well, or whoever the leader or leaders are as well. This is a really good point that I didn't think about from G's secondary account. He's saying that, like, some ways Fred has had more pressure put on him because Nick makes him be more the leader and carry more of the burden of directing things. Some ways, if the coach takes the lead, like they're supposed to, and do all the directing as the coach, this would make things easier for Fred and maybe make things easier with him with his other teammates because everything's already sussed out and figured out how they should be doing what and what. And it's really the coach that's going to hold them accountable instead of making the captain, the point guard on the court, who's just trying to get his game back together and hit shots again. Then he doesn't have to worry about so much all at the same time. I love this comment. I think G's right. This is something that is needed for the leaders of the team is take some of the pressure off them by the coach stepping up and taking their job seriously. Shane saying in the voice from the Field of Dreams, if you bring Udoka, Jaylen Brown will come. That's another part of it. Jaylen Brown says his favorite coach is M.A. Adoka. And if his favorite coach is coaching Toronto, that's what I'm saying. And, Masai's hinting at this. Things can change and happen real quick. If the Celtics do not get to the finals, or do something like get to the championship or whatever, it could very well be that Jaylen Brown is looking to leave. And that we have some assets on our team that Boston would be willing to trade to get Jaylen Brown on our team. So Shane's got something there. He's spelled the name right. He's corrected it. Cool Cat saying M.A. Adoka being African is great. Hang on, it jumped. La, 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 la. M.A. Adoka being African is great for the African players culturally. Then Popovich Tree is good for Scotty. Fundamentals and our young players. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he can identify with a lot of guys on our team. I mean, we got Precious, we got OG, we got Pascal, we got Christian. We got guys that have African roots. And in some ways, that is a very easy way for somebody to identify with you. I remember when I came over and I tried to make my career and this and how I did it and stuff. And the other thing is, Adoka did play in the NBA. He wasn't a high level pro, and he was kind of a journeyman, and he didn't get to play a lot. He wasn't a starter ever, but he did have 7 years in the NBA as a pro, and that's something that has to be counted and credit for him. Name was saying, I'd like to give a black coach the opportunity, I think, too. There's enough old white men doing it, bro. I'm with you. That's why I'm not interested in Kenny Atkinson or Vogel. And you look at my spreadsheet, you see the guys that say no. There's a lot of guys that did not have NBA experience. And Rex Kalamian, Messina, Scarioli, Frank Vogel. Those are the old white guys that did not have any experience actually playing the NBA. And maybe they're a little bit more like the old. And the new is we want more of the old players coaching in the NBA because they have real experience and they have things that you can relate to better. And that's guys like Sam Cassell, Adrian Griffin, Earl Watson, Jerry Stackhouse, Chris Quinn. Those guys have all played in the NBA and they know the reality of it and what those guys deal with. And that in some ways is not even really about color. But in some ways, sure, we have one of the few team presidents is a man of color, and that is important. And in some ways, that is a part of what we're doing up here is advancing people that maybe have not had opportunities in the past. Well, that's what we like to do here in Toronto, and we're all about it. Okay, let me say Kwaku Ghana. Okay, Kwaku Ghana. Okay, cool. I'm glad you're here, and I hope you'll join us more often. Like I said, every day we're here. We meet every day at 9:30, and we talk about Raptor stuff. So hopefully you can be added to the brain trust. Kwake Ghana. Yes, I knew it was just like the country, the last part. I just want to get your first name right. Kwaku. I got to say it right. Kwaku. That it's important. I know my name's difficult to say too. I've had my name butchered all kinds of crazy ways. So this is important to me. What style of play would suit the Raptors right now? I think traditional stuff. We've been so like crazy with trying new things and being the cutting edge of the league. In some ways, you got to come back to the fundamentals. And I think because we have Pirtle, we're going to have him again for next year. Hopefully, we sign him for sure. But Masai seems pretty confident about that we have a center now. So what we could really do is get back to the 1 through 5 positions instead of doing a positionless 6-9 all the time or trying to make it our main meaty scheme. We could get back to more fundamental, basic, like old school basketball with a center and a point guard. And I think that could be very fruitful. That in some ways, the diversification of roles on our team should be a goal for the season. That things were too ambiguous with having so many like talented wings that are so like multi-talented and can do so many different things. In some ways, we need to start dividing up the jobs that need to be done on the basketball court and make it very clear whose responsibilities are what. And the best way to do that is to have a set 1, 2, 3, 4 up to 5. And Jakob does center things. Fred does point guard things. Scotty does shooting guard or small forward things, depending on where he's slotted. If he's slotted at the 1, he does the point guard things. But we have more defined traditional 1 through 5 roles than ever. I think that is the biggest key for this year. And I hope that the new coach does this. Now, the positionless ideas are great, and we can still revert to them at times when it really fits the scenario of what's happening in the game. I have no problem going positionless if we have a big lead and we want to just be a very annoying big defensive team at all positions. So it's a skill, it's a thing and a look we can use still, much like a zone defense, but it's not something we should be doing like 80% of the time, like we were trying to in recent years. So that I hope that answers your question. That I'd like to go more traditional with a 1 through 5 with a center and the point guard. And with Pirtle around, we can do that finally. Jimmy's saying, I'm happy we can get a new vibe on the team. That's a plus. Yeah, I'm all about the vibes. The vibes were so bad this year. We need new vibes. We need strong vibes. We need good vibes. Bring on the vibes. Blackhawk saying, I'm keeping Pascal. Oh, he's mad at me for even saying that. Well, I'd like to keep him also. But in some ways, Masai was saying it's about fit. It's like who's going to fit with a new system? Who's going to fit with the other players the way that they want? And what the coach that's coming in, what they want. And in some ways, that may dictate things with who's on our team. Now, Siakam may be not somebody that's looked at as changing or moving or anything. It's just somebody off the top of my head. In some ways, it would make sense in a way if we want to make a big sweeping change with our roster, that's the dude we would move out of anybody. That he has a lot of value. And in some ways, his isolation type of style of play takes away from encouraging the other guys from being more cohesive and connected. So in some ways, Siakam is partly to blame for why we played this year, even though he played at a super high level and he was fantastic. I have sentimentality about Pascal and I don't want to move him, but I'm thinking rationally and I'm thinking what's best for the team overall. And that's the way Masai will think also. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see how it goes. Hopefully I'm wrong and he is still a Raptor next season. That is what I ultimately would like. But listen, he traded DeMar DeRozan. I love DeMar DeRozan. I still do to this day. And he did that cutthroat shit. I was like, Masai ain't playing. And that's what we have to realize, that he ain't playing. And nobody's off the table except for Scotty. Scotty's the only one he won't trade. He will trade any single one of them, including Fred. But I don't think he's likely to trade Fred for certain reasons. Cool Cat saying the only player Nick Nurse never dissed in public was Fred. He dissed Pascal, Scotty, Gary Trent Jr., Boucher, Precious, OG publicly. Yeah, I think you're right. Now, Freddie had a very interesting Instagram last night. Let me just look at it real quick with you guys. It had a lot in it, and I think it was him talking about losing Nick as our coach. Let's see. His Instagram is basically this. The first page is like a survey or something, and it says gratitude and appreciation. If thank you was the only prayer you prayed to God, it would be enough. Amen. Copy, translate, paste. So I think he's saying thank you to Nick in an indirect way without actually like blatantly saying thank you, Nick Nurse, or something like that. I know maybe he thinks he would get hell from people because of kind of what Cool Cat's saying here, that Fred was his teacher's pet and that he never came after him. I think this is an indirect way of Fred saying thank you to Nick. And then the second part is very interesting. He's saying you can close your eyes to things you don't want to see, but you can't close your heart to the things you don't want to feel. Real talk. Now, when I see that, I'm like seeing, Freddie's hurting from this. There's a very strong bond and connection between Nick Nurse and our players. And I'm sure some of them are in mourning in the last few days after the news from Friday. Some of them are not treating it like we are and saying, well, this is a new chapter and this is very exciting. Some of them are maybe a little scared because it's unsettled and they don't know who the new coach is going to be and they don't know how their role and how their place on the team is going to be. So in some ways, this is very stressful for the players. It's not only sad because they're saying goodbye to a coach that they've known and they really do like. They do really like him. And it's also the unknown of not knowing what's going to happen with our coaching situation can be very stressful for them also. So the faster that Masai can get a name and somebody hired, the better, because then they can start building the relationships with these guys and making them feel calmer about what their role is going to be with the new regime as a coach. That's definitely something that's going on this weekend, is that these guys are mourning losing their coach this weekend, the guy that coached them to a championship. So I can definitely see that. Let's see. G saying a strict coach will take pressure off the vets and leaders of the team, in my opinion. They can focus on ball while being sub-leaders under a strong coach. Yes, and yes. Yes. I love all that. And I'm all about getting a little more strict with our players. And I think that they're all about it too. I think things have been a little too nice. One of the things Chris said in recent years, Chris Boucher, that he's gotten better because Nick Nurse has been very critical of him and pointed out and been hard on him. Well, that has worked. He's responded to that. And that is something that we can maybe get the whole team to respond to, being hard on them instead of being a little too easy on them. Cool Cat saying out of Pascal or Fred, I would keep Pascal. Fred was a bench player on the chip run. Contribution was really Golden State Warriors box and one with Curry. Langton POA hole did it for me with Fred. Yeah, I mean, listen, I know that the defensive liabilities of Fred in some ways are important. And listen, I don't want it to be about choosing between the two of them or anything. In fact, I really don't kind of want to move anybody, but if Masai sees that he needs to, he needs to. But I will say this in some ways, one of the things that Masai made very clear on Friday is he very much values high IQ players. And the two players that have the highest IQ on our team are Fred and Jakob. So I'm going to guess that these are guys that he really, really is holding on to no matter what. Because in some ways, it makes total sense that you want very intelligent, very high IQ kind of players like those guys. I'm not saying Pascal's a dummy or anything, but there's a different level of comprehension and understanding in certain ways and certain things that's different. Now, I know that Siakam is a fantastic player, and I know that he's one of your favorites. And I'm all about wanting to keep him. Trust me. It's just that he is the likely candidate if we are going to move somebody this summer in a big move. He is the DeMar DeRozan this summer. I unfortunately have to say that if there's going to be a big move, it's going to be with him. It could possibly be OG, but I think that what Masai said about OG on Friday made it seem like he very much values keeping him around as long as possible. I'm really kind of going by what Masai said and told on Friday. And in some ways, he didn't say certain things about valuing Pascal as much as he valued Fred and OG. Let's just put it that way. All right. I want to make sure I say it right. Kweku Ghana is saying, thoughts on Gary Trent? Who would you target in a sign and trade? Now, you're saying we got to sign Gary and go ahead and just move him and trade him for somebody else. Why don't we just sign him and keep him? he fits with our team. I don't care if he walks either. A lot of people are worried about him just walking and us not even signing him. We don't get anything from him. I don't give a shit about that stuff. People get so upset about that. Like they feel like it's a drain or a loss of talent or something like that. No, you open up money, you open up a spot, you open up the opportunity to have somebody new step into that spot. And if you trade somebody like a big name on your team and you get two players back, well, then you have a second player that needs a spot. And, there's different things like that. So it's really management. Now, I'd love to have Gary back also. I think that he does really fit our team and he's been fantastic. I'm not totally thinking he's going to be back, though, just because of the situation with money and the way it would fit with what we're trying to do. It doesn't not exactly fit. Now, it's so wide open what could be the target for a sign and trade. I'm not very good at this. I don't speculate in that kind of way. It's really kind of like I speculate kind of more in the real thing. And I'm not going to just like throw a dartboard and say, okay, they should sign Gary and trade him for this guy from another team. I'm not going to get into that because there's so many possibilities. So it's like, I don't know. I don't know who they would want to do that for. Sign and trade for Norman Powell. I don't know. Blackhawk saying we're trying to reboot culture. So that will mean letting go of Fred. Fred will not want to let go of the reins is why he will be the one to go. That is all untrue. Blackhawk, I'm going to say you're exactly wrong because he does want to change. He'll change his role. He'll change whatever. It may be he's a little unsure about how things are going to go because Nick's gone now. But he's a team player, and he's always been able to adapt. And that's one thing about Fred. Listen, as I said, I had a plan earlier this month that I said maybe we should reignite the bench mob by putting Freddie back on the bench and making him the backup point guard for our team. He'd be in a similar role to like Malcolm Brogdon this year for the Celtics. And I said that, and people were like, whoa, whoa. And it's like, you know what? He would do that. I'm telling you, all he cares about is winning. He will change his role. He will change whatever he has to do on this team to add up to winning. That's the ultimate thing he cares about. He said it over and over again. I believe him. He's gone from so many different roles, starting from being not even on the team to making the team, to being a rotation player, to being a starter. He's done so many different things and leveling up to where he's at. He will change his role. In fact, he's got accolades as a starter already. I mean, it may be weird for him to go back to being a bench player next year, but you know what? They asked him to do that and it made sense to him and they laid out the plan as to why they want to do it that way. He would say yes. You're wrong, Blackhawk. That Fred will change his role. I'll bet you, in fact, he would sacrifice himself as a starter to get another Larry O'Brien. Trust me, he would. He would, and you're wrong. He's not gonna. He will let go of the reins. Trust me. In some ways, he was ready to let go of the reins last year at the beginning of the year to Scotty as the point guard, but he wasn't ready, and then he had to revert back to being the point guard. So this is a mischaracterization of Fred, and it's a lot of the bullshit that Pensera people have been saying. That's not true. Fred will do the changes. He will change his. He will change things to do whatever fits what's going on forward. Cool Cat saying to Trey Pascal or OG, we need first to give them a new contract to get great value for their skills by getting a superstar or hall of players. Yeah, I mean that may be that like you do the extension for one of those guys this summer, and then yeah, I don't know. I mean that's kind of the pattern. You know, he fired Casey and then he made the Kawhi move. In some ways, that may is there's a little bit of a signal that he's going to do that again this summer, and that means a big move. That means a very big move. But I don't know. Maybe he won't. Maybe he'll just give the new coach a chance to go with this collection of guys and see if they can make it work. But he did say, Messiah said on Friday, he's analyzing everything and looking at everything about how the team fit together this season. And if something didn't work where they weren't fitting together or like going together well with overall guys, and he values Scotty, that's where I'm saying the people that aren't connecting with Scotty may be in trouble this summer. That's kind of what Masai was saying on Friday. Cowboys saying the Raptors are going to be dangerous next year. The NBA should be very, very afraid. We don't need much to, but use over the edge. Any coach with attitude and a couple of new faces on the team. Let's go Raptors. Okay, Bradley, you go, Bradley. Back on your regular account, not using your ladies' account at this point. Yeah, I'm with you on this. I think we could be dangerous. Like people may sleep on us once again because they're going to think, oh, they're on their way down again. But I think this is very much a thing where we're going to have a little bit of a down year this year, and we're going to come right back up and be back at our regular, normal Raptors culture level. That this year was just a down year overall, just like the Tampa year. We've got a little bit of a wave going. We had a good up year last year. Now we're down year, and we're going to come back up on the next year. And I really do believe this. And people may sleep on us because they think we're dead in the water because we fired our coach and we had such a mid year this year. They're going to be like, well, and they may be very surprised and scared actually what happens. Wayne saying, not saying Udoka isn't good, but Boston's success is Brad Stevens' influence. That's definitely true. Current coach of Boston is successful. What's the variable we're looking at? The coaches follow the system success assured. Well, I mean, it's really kind of like I paid really close attention to the games that season. When we played the Celtics, he was coaching the hell out of that team. Like, really, seriously, he has a fire to him and he has a passion and he has an inspirational thing to him that really kicks the guys in the butt and gets a little bit extra out of them. Now, the difference between him and Joe is Joe's a little bit more casual and laid back and not as fiery, but Adoka, I'm telling you, this dude really cares and he gets more out of them. It's like he brings more out of the team. I'm telling you. I know that a lot of it is the way Brad Stevens set up the Celtics, the roster, the way he built it, maybe the system he was asking him to use. But, you know, there's reasons why Adoka is so highly prized and he's creative. He's a mind just like Nick Nurse is. Nick Nurse is creative and he made up all kinds of different ideas and he tried different things. He was very willing to do that. Some ways Udoka is that same kind of coach, and that we value that to a degree here in Toronto because of what Nick Nurse has done with us. We want to keep that in the as one of the characteristics of our coach. Well, Udoka has that to a degree. I think he could go at any team because like if you look at where he's coached with Popovich in San Antonio, with Brett Brown in Philadelphia, with Steve Nash in the Nets, with the Celtics as the head coach. They've all been different scenarios and very, very different kinds of systems and different kind of players. And that shows kind of more of a versatility beyond what you're saying about just his time in Boston, is what I'm saying. Like a lot of Udoka isn't just the Boston year that he coached. It's also all the years he spent under Popovich in San Antonio, that experience he had with the Sixers when they lost to us, when Embiid went crying down the hallway. And then also the time he saw the dysfunction and the bad stuff with Steve Nash and Kyrie and Kevin Durant and James Harden in Brooklyn. So he's been in a couple different places and saw a lot of different stuff. So there's a lot of knowledge there. And I wouldn't say that it's, you know, of course he's working within Brad Stevens' system, but it's also, there's all kinds of stuff from him inside that is a part of why they did so well that year. Shir Khan saying W stream. Again, got my first dunk as well. Awesome, Shirkan. So happy for you. Let me see you jumped. Hang on. Let me get this here. Did anyone check out the Bronny movie trailer? Bronny has a movie. Getting into the media scene even before coming into the NBA, trying to boost his stock for the draft with Pop. In some ways, I feel like Bronny's going to be so overhyped. I think that like he's fool's gold. I think that if you want to get Bronny, well, you should get him because you want LeBron on your team. But in some ways, I have a feeling he's going to not meet expectations. Like he has a lot on his shoulders, considering who his dad is and the history of his dad. So I know that there's been really cool highlights, and he looks really good in certain ways. But in some ways, I know that he's fool's gold. For some reason, Bronny James is going to be fool's gold for whoever wants to get him. Sure, you'll get his dad with him for a little while, but down the road, his dad will retire. And I don't know if Bronny's going to be the caliber that everybody thinks he's going to be. He's been his stock is a little inflated by LeBron himself. He's very much pumping him up and trying to make him like bigger and bigger. In some ways, he's a nepo baby. And in some ways, that may bite like who actually Bronny is as a real pro when all the dust settles. Ooh, there's all the sparkle and all the movies and all that kind of stuff. But in some ways, I don't believe in him. Let's just put it that way. Space Cadet saying Blackhawk. That seems like a lot of speculation and conspiracy. Talking about Fred. Yeah. MSJ saying MA is just not a solid person. Well, I don't know if that's totally true. I mean, in some ways, yeah, I get it because of the scandals, because of him doing sneaky stuff with people's wives behind their back. The travel coordinator was the one he was sleeping with on the support staff, and that's not good. That's never, ever good. We talked about this a lot last year. I told the dynamics of power in the workplace, in sexual relationships. This is not something you want to utilize to get some. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. He's had a year to sit out. He's a smart guy. He probably understands he's been tainted with this mark, and he's going to be very like careful to not show that he continues to have these kind of problems. I'm pretty sure that if he gets a second chance and gets to coach in the NBA again, I'm sure he's not going to want to fuck it up by making the same exact mistake. So that's what I'll speculate on that. Jake's here. Jake Caesar. Good to see Jake. What kind of moves you think Masai is going to make in the offseason? Well, he could make a Kawhi level trade. It may be very small little things. It could be the draft pick. We get to see a new draft pick come in. That'd be flashy. We'll see. We'll see. I trust in Masai, and whatever he decides to do, I'll stand behind and support, even with my propaganda. Even though people may be like, what the fuck is Masai doing trading for Jakob and not selling our team at the trade deadline? Well, I'll stand beside Masai and make the reasoning for why he's doing what, because it's usually right. And he's usually very brilliant in what he's doing. And the people are just freaking out for no reason. And that's part of why I do this channel, is to stick with the company, stick with the side of Masai, because he is a genius and he does know what he's doing. And everybody thinks he's failing. They're wrong. He's going to come back around and show that genius again when we get our second chip. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly specifically, Jake. I'm not really good at speculating specific moves, but I can kind of like see the landscape of what's happening as it develops this summer. And like I said, we're going to be here every day. So as things change, we hear rumors, we hear little speculative stories come out. We'll analyze them and we'll talk about them and see. Like last year, we did think tanks on Rudy Gobert, DeAndre Ayton, different players that were in bad places with their franchises and were looking to get moved. And we looked at the fit on our team and we decided that Gobert would not be a good fit for our team. And we were right. We were right. He's not a good fit for anybody's team. But we do that kind of content on this channel during the summer. So, as they come up specifically, we'll look at each one and we'll really analyze whether it's good for the Raptors or not. Kweku Ghana is saying, I'm a UK fan of the NBA, most likely going to follow the Raptors next season as they have early games here. And I'm a fan of OG. See, this is awesome. We are already seeing some of the great positive benefits of OG having ownership with the London Lions. It's going to be a good thing for both sides because now maybe a UK fan like Kweku is coming to watch the Raptors because of an interest with OG being interested in the London Lions. Meanwhile, our Raptors fans are more likely to go and watch the London Lions play now because of OG's ownership stake in that team. This is so great. This is fantastic. We want to expand the global fan base of the Toronto Raptors. And if we have more UK Raptors fans because OG, that's fantastic. Welcome. And I'm glad you picked us. Listen, this road will be tough at times. This past year was hard to be a Raptors fan. But I'm going to tell you, the rewards and the goals and the progress that we're going to have, you stick with us and stay with us. Mr. Ghana, you are going to enjoy yourself and you will get to reap the rewards and celebration of our second championship when it comes. And I made the prediction that when Jakob Poeltl signs his contract this year, we're going to win a championship in the duration of the contract that he signs this summer. We will get our second championship in the contract that Jakob signs. And G saying, that's cool, Ghana. Welcome. See, yeah, we're a family here. And if you want to stick around and be a part of our family, we most welcome that. People want to talk about the Raptors, even in the off season. And there's a lot of people who dry up with that in the summer. Not here. We're always talking Raptors. MSJ saying race should have nothing to do with it. Otherwise, racism is at play. The team has to play fast and use their advantages in transition. New hire has to fit this, yet insist they learn a half court too. Yeah. The half court offense in some ways is our Achilles heel, is not the transition. In some ways, we're not very good at finishing in transition with numbers. That is something we could probably work on too. So I think it's just offense in general. I mean, I get what MSJ is saying. It's not affirmative action. It's really, you want to have the very best candidate. There's only 30 jobs in the league as a head coach. And over the years, it's gotten way better. In fact, the league was half African-American coaches. I shouldn't say that. I should say black coaches, because some of them were American possibly. But like half the league, exactly, 15 white, 15 black coaches recently in recent years. And that's increased because before it was more predominantly white in the history of the NBA. And that's good. It's changing more to reflect the league and its makeup. And I know what you're saying, MSJ, and I agree with this. We want the best candidate. This isn't about affirmative action. This isn't about hiring a Canadian coach just because they're Canadian. This is about getting the best damn coach that'll make us win, whether they're white, black, or whatever. That's what we want this year. And I'm with you on that. Josh Monroe saying players like Thad, Flynn, Boucher, Precious are in make or break positions next season, or should there be a change in that rotation? I'm with you. Now, I'll say right there that maybe the first two names you mentioned, Josh, may not be on the team next year. I could see Malachi getting traded or just parting ways with him. At this point, I don't even know what his contract status is. Is he under contract for next year? Well, then maybe he'll be around. But if he isn't, we may not re-sign him and he may just go away. Now, Thaddeus, the writing's on the wall. He said that himself. I don't think he's going to be back next season, even if Nick Nurse is gone and they were the first people that had the conflict. No, I don't think that Thad's going to be back. Now, the other two, they're definitely going to be back, and they're definitely going to be rotational players and important players for us. Precious and Chris are a tag team. That's DX, baby. Suck it. And those dudes are definitely going to be a part of our plan for next year and will definitely be two of the guys in the main rotation for sure. But yeah, the first two, I don't know. They could be gone this summer. And Flynn's spot could actually be filled with a new shooter, a much more capable guy that does more for us than Flynn's been able to do in his time with us. Nameless saying, listen, let's be real. They didn't bring in Poeltl to move Siakam. He's safe. Well, I would argue they didn't bring in Poeltl to move Fred, because in some ways the chemistry between Fred and Poeltl is better than Pascal and Poeltl. Now, listen, I know they have a connection and they are best friends, but there's something weird about them at this point. I've noticed this when Poeltl came back. Pascal wasn't like that enthusiastic or excited about Poeltl coming back. In some ways, I think that in some ways their bromance as a rookie year was just for then. And now that they're like older vets, they have big contracts. Siakam in some ways is kind of like stratifying himself away from the team, and it's kind of bugging me. I understand you're the highest paid player on our team, but in some ways, if I saw you more palling around and being the goofy like friend that you were with Jakob more this season, I'd feel better about this. But some reason I don't feel like they're as close as they used to be. There's something weird about their friendship. I think that because they were such a known bromance and friendship that they're a little touchy about it at this point. Like, remember when he came, I was saying, oh, well, Jakob will be fine. He can go stay at Pascal's house while he's waiting to find a place himself. Well, no. Siakam said he's not staying at my house. I don't want him staying at my house. He's on his own. And that was very telling to me that they're not as close friends as they used to be. Like, that bond between Poeltl and Pascal is still strong, but they're not like birds of a feather, like doing stuff together all the time. The Siakam's gone big time with his big salary. And in some ways, he's not the same person as he was when he was teammates with Poeltl before. So in some ways, I can't say that that's exactly true, what you're saying, that they didn't bring Pirtle back just to move Siakam. In fact, the synergy and the stuff that I'm seeing with Fred and Pirtle is much more important than the synergy I've been seeing with Pascal. And that's, I hate to say it, I don't think they're as close friends as they used to be. And that's part of the problem in some ways. I want them to be more buddy buddy like they used to be. I don't see them palling around like they used to as much as on the court or having fun laughs. In fact, I feel like Jakob's been disappointed in the amount that he gets to be around Pascal to a degree. I think Pascal's going big time, and in some ways, it's not good. He needs to fucking come down to earth and be more with the team instead of being like another level. That when LeBron does that shit and stratifies himself above the rest of the team, that's never good. And in some ways, Siakam's doing something that like DeRozan and Lowry never did before, and it was a very important value about the Raptors. And I worry about that being part of the problem with the conflicts on the team. Is that Siakam is letting his salary go to his head and he's stratifying himself above the rest of the Raptors. And I don't want that to happen. Monique saying a very active stream today. W stream all around. Keep at it, Lex. Always exciting times ahead. And I'm ready. Yeah, Monique's ready for the changes and to see what happens. Cowboys saying, let's go, Ghana. Welcome to the Raptor Freak family. And OG is the man. Let's go, Raptors. Fiercey saying, maybe Fred knows he's the next one leaving. I don't know. I mean, in some ways, that does kind of portend that kind of thing as far as Fred and what he said on his Instagram. They're no longer there. They were there just a second ago, but now they're gone. Yeah, who knows? Maybe Fred does know something. I don't know what's going to happen with Fred. I don't know what's going to happen with Pascal. I'm just speculating in some ways with this and how I feel with what's going on. Leslie saying Clutch is the main reason why Nick is gone. I think they inflated his head, told him that they could get him paid more because he's a celebrity coach. Nick Nurse's attitude totally changed this season. Yeah. Clutch is insidious. Like in some ways, I've heard that this was a problem with Earl Watson in Phoenix. That he was represented by Clutch before, but he's not anymore. And part of the reason why was he was in Phoenix, and the Phoenix Suns management told him as a coach, we don't want you to be managed by Clutch, that this is a conflict of interest. And there was a whole back and forth and a battle between Robert Sarver, the owner of the Suns at that time, and Earl Watson. And it was part of the whole thing with the discrimination and the weird stuff that was going on there with the toxic front office in Phoenix. Well, one of their contentions was they didn't like that he was represented by Clutch at that time. Now, Earl is no longer represented by Clutch at this point, but at that time it was. And the Suns looked at it as a detriment, and they wanted him to not be represented by them. That's very interesting to me. Now, Fred is Clutch and newly Clutch. And that is scary to me, considering the issues we're having with Nick because of his Clutch representation. So I'm with you. Kwiku Ghana saying, sign and trade Fred and Gary for KP Jr., Kevin Porter Jr. out of Houston. No, that's not worth that. That guy's not worth those. He may be worth just Gary by himself, but he's not worth both of those guys together. No way. That's not a good deal. Porter, right? Porter Jr. Yeah, that's not Martin Jr. Let's see. Cool Cat saying, Lex, Pascal's isolation play is what Nick Nurse wanted from him because Fred is not a Lowry type. That was great for Pascal's speed and athleticism. Fred is the slowest player in our corner. Yeah, but he makes up for it. And, Larry Bird was one of the slowest players in the history of the NBA. And that's not why he was great. He was great because of and all the other stuff. And that's why I love Fred. It's true. He's slow, but that doesn't matter. He's a good player all around. And there's all kinds of different things that he does really well. I know that Nick was directing Siakam to do the isolation, and maybe he could do a new system. It's just, I hate the isolation. I don't want to see it anymore. It fails too often than it's successful. And I just want to see a coach use him better. In some ways, I don't want him to be the number one option. I want him to be more of a role player. I want him to focus on defense and rebounding more than his shooting all the time. The shooting will be there and he'll get his baskets. But in some ways, I don't want him to be the designated number one for the Raptors next year. We fail if he's our number one. And I don't want that anymore. In fact, I'm looking where the failure is. The coach failed. And in some ways, our number one failed this year. And that's why I'm being really hard on Siakam, because he has a higher responsibility grade in some ways, being designated the number one. And he's just not. He infuriates me because he's so casual about not being successful at being the number one. He's like, sometimes I just don't make them, and it just doesn't happen. Fuck that. Be angry, Make sure that it happens the right way the next time. And that's the thing that pisses me off about him. That is really what it is. That Pascal's too casual about winning and losing, and that pisses me off. I know he feels it and he's upset and he doesn't like it, but in some ways, fucking do something about it. Quit stewing about it and being upset about it. Fucking do something about it, Siakam, is what I'm saying. Now, like I said, we're going to have different opinions. Obviously, I'm a Fred guy and you're a Pascal lady. And that, there's nothing wrong with that. And honestly, I like both of them a lot. It's just that I'm trying to be real about things. I'm doing what Masai and Bobby are doing. We're analyzing everything. And these are gripes about these players. Your gripes about Fred, my gripes about Pascal. They're valid. And they're definitely going to be things that our front office are looking at for sure. Wayne's saying, bottom line is we all trust Masai. Whatever the decisions is, we support. Fred was close to Nick, of course. He wasn't held to a higher level of accountability, less selfishness, and better results. Nick stays. Yeah, I agree with this. This is so good that we have somebody like Masai Ujiri around leading our team. If we were rudderless and we didn't have a really strong, good leader, we'd be fucking like crazy. Our fan nation would be so fucking crazy because we would not have any confidence that good things are coming down the road. It's so good that we have Masai. Honestly, the fact that he is somebody who is steering the ship, it makes you have hope and understand that things will get better. If we didn't have somebody like that, we would be out in the middle of the ocean, treading water with no hope and not even knowing if anybody's coming to save us. So in some ways, having Masai is very much important. And thank God. And a summer like this, where everything's going to be unsure, at least we have this guy and we can trust him. The closeness of Fred and Nick, in some ways, I understand what y'all are saying. And you would think that just makes you think, okay, well, Fred will be the next to go. Because if Nick's teacher's pet was Fred, Fred must be going too. And a lot of Raptors Nation is saying this right now. In fact, they're saying, now do Fred. You fired Nick. Now get rid of Fred. Send him away. I still don't believe that's going to happen. Because partly, like I said, I'm listening to Masai very closely. In fact, I watched his press conference like 5 times because I really wanted to ingrain my head with exactly what Masai's message is. And he's only said good things about Fred, and it sounds like he values Fred and he wants Fred on this team next year. So I'm going by what he said between the lines in some ways. And Fred's safe. He's probably going to be with us next year. Space Cadet saying is if there is anyone on the core who's likely to be moved is Gary and OG. Gary might just walk, and OG could be traded for depth. Raptors need depth. Yeah, this could be very much true. That Pascal and Fred are both back here next year, and OG's the one who gets traded for a big name that adds a splash to our team. The Gary thing is totally separate. In fact, he's in a weird, different kind of place where it's like very, very much you're going to match up a number with us that makes sense, that fits for us and is okay for you, and then you can stay. Otherwise, it's going to be he's hasta la vista. And in some ways, I see the writing on the wall already with Gary that he is probably not going to be in a Raptors uniform next year. It's too bad. Blackhawk saying after May 16, we're going to see Lex. That's right. They want to have this coach before the draft. And hopefully we'll know, and this will be really good. Shirkan saying 40 people watching right now. Let's hit that like button. Thank you, Shirkan. Love the fact that we're getting new people in the chat. Best live streams in Raps Nation. Now bench mob on the horizon. The 13th pick is the catalyst. Thank you, Shirkan. Appreciate that. Anything you guys can do to help me grow, that's fantastic. People that are passionate about the Raptors and want to be positive fans and are sick of all the toxic noise on Twitter, on Facebook, and all over the place in social media. This is your safe haven. This is a place to be just a true fan that really ultimately does really want the best things for the Raptors. That's the same thing we all have in common here. That if you're not a real one, we'll suss you out real quick and you'll see the door because we don't have any time for fake ass trolls acting like the Raptors fans and just putting more confusing noise into our social media spaces. And this is the safe haven. Thank you, Shirkan, for being here. Yeah, 13th pick. We'll see what happens. Bench mob. I'd love to see a better bench mob next year for sure. Nameless is saying, Lex, you have to let go of this delusion that Fred would. Hang on. It jumped always. Lex, you have to let go of this delusion that Fred would and is willing to come off the bench next season. No, I'm not going to give up that delusion. Listen, this man, you got to understand where he comes from. He comes from nothing and he made him into something. And everybody thinks he's so selfish, but that is not the damn truth. If they asked him to come off the bench and be our 6th man and be in the running for 6th man and made prestige out of it, he would do it. He's not that kind of ego. Y'all think he has an ego in the wrong way. That's not what it is. He's been humbled over and over again in his life. He knows how to keep his ego with being humbled at the same time. And it's not that this is a bad move. This will strengthen our team. In fact, if they sell it to him in a way to say, look, we're going to be so good this year, we're going to have you off the bench and that you're going to be leading our bench team just like you did with the bench mob. You could sell him on that. And in some ways, you could say, like, look, Fred, the starters are going to be younger and you guys can really make them have to compete. Is if they don't fucking play well enough, you get all the minutes for the rest of the game. It's just like they did with the bench mob with Casey. If the starters, Kyle, DeMar, Serge Ibaka, those guys weren't playing at a certain level, well, Fred and Jakob and Pascal would come in and take the fucking minutes from them for the rest of the game. And that was a real strength in having two units. You have the really good, talented starters. You have a really good bench mob led by Fred VanVleet. That causes competition on your team. And it elevates everybody's level of play to go even higher and crazier. And that's why Casey's teams were so good the last couple of years he was the Raptors coach. And that's what I want to duplicate again. How do you do it? You get the guy who ran the bench mob in the first place. And I'm telling you, if they sold it to him the right way, that they said this is going to lead to wins, this is going to lead to a deep playoff run, this could lead to our second championship, Fred will fucking do it in a heartbeat. Seriously, because the only thing he cares about is the fucking championships. Is serious. The money is his family, sure, but it's the championships. He wants to be synonymous with the word champion. Well, he needs to win some more championships. And if it means he's on the bench, he has no problem with it. I'm telling you right now, Nameless, you think that's a delusion. But we could go talk to Fred, and we could talk to him right now and say, hey, Fred, would you come off the bench if it meant y'all win a championship next year? Yeah, I'd do it. There you go. Boom. Kweku is saying Devontae Graham. Now, he's interesting. He's a little bit of an undersized scoring guard. I don't mind him. He's now in San Antonio. He's been shuffled around a little bit, been traded a little bit. And I think he's in San Antonio presently right now. Now, he's a good scorer. Now, he had a DUI last summer. There's different things about him that are attractive, but there's some things that aren't. He's undersized. And that's the biggest thing I probably have a problem with him. Now, if he can fill it up and he can shoot really well, that will definitely be something that we want. No more comments because I'm getting into 2.5 hours, and we're going to try and wrap this up in 3 hours. Wayne saying, saw he who shall not be named for 4 minutes, and he was with you on the Toronto media. They were doing a hit job on Masai, saying Nick Nurse was pushed to his behavior by Udoka rumors in the press. Bullshit. That's crazy. I don't totally understand what you're saying. This is all Clutch is doing. It doesn't really have anything to do with Udoka. This definitely just has to do with Rich Paul and Clutch. And telling Nick to do dumb shit that fucked up his career. And you could tell Nick didn't really have his heart into it, but he did it anyway. Cowboys saying, gotta go, Lex and Raptor Freaks. Bam, 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 bam. Everybody enjoy your day. Let's go, Raptors, Maple Leafs. Let's go. It's Sunday, y'all. Have a great Sunday afternoon, Bradley. Nameless saying, I totally agree 100%. But I say that because in this particular situation, the best candidates are actually of color. So it's a perfect opportunity for the Raptors to go ahead and do it. Yeah, well, that's true, too. That in some ways the best candidates are people of color anyway. And that it doesn't have anything to do with that factor. It just has to do with who are the best candidates. And they just happen to be people of color. And that's great. That all works out. Shere Khan saying, great Yak contract prediction, Lex. Raps most definitely get one chip in the next 4 years, either with this core or a big move like Spida Mitchell or a bench boost like Brogdon. I'm predicting our pick mix all rookie. Ooh, I like all those predictions, Shere Khan. And yeah, I feel this. Like Masai's on the same page as me. He called him a championship piece. Like he doesn't mean like he means that shit, that he really looks at him as being a center for a championship team. And I believe him and I'm with him because he's that kind of player. Kweku saying Siakam and Pirtle are just older now, maybe. Yeah, I think they grew up and they're a little more mature and older. And in some ways, they're not like connecting as they did because they were playful and more fun and kind of youthful and naive and maybe just a little bit like, they're just young. They matured. And in some ways, Siakam's lifestyle may be completely different than when he was a young player for the Raptors when he played with Jakob then. And I just get that feeling that the vibes and the connection between them isn't as strong as it was when they were younger. And I don't understand why. And I try to put my finger on it. And I'm starting to think, well, is it because Siakam's getting a little too big for his britches in some ways, as far as being the highest paid guy on our team? And that's what I worry about. When you have different guys that are in different pay grades, he's in a totally different pay grade than anybody else on the team. And I don't want that to go to his head or make him stratify himself away from the rest of the team. You need to be there and doing everything with everybody all the time, Pascal, just like Kyle and DeMar taught you. You just need that. Fiercely saying, you're right, Lex. Pascal seems to have changed, and the connection with Yak seems weird. I sense that because I was like really looking forward to like the bonding and the friendship and the good vibes, but it just didn't show. Like I haven't seen it. Like even on the court when I see them interact, there's a little bit of fun. There was a little bit, it's like the whole thing where Siakam came up to Jakob and he said, "Why didn't you pick your old number, 42?" I liked when we were the same, like close. We were like 42 and 43. And Jakob's like, "Well, I have my reasons for picking number 19. We know what his reason is. That's the year we won the championship." And he wants to remind everybody that's what we're after. And that's what he missed. And that's why he wears 19. But in some ways, Siakam was upset that he didn't wear 42 after that. But it's weird. I don't know. They could be actually super close, and it's just behind the scenes, and I'm not seeing it. But for some reason, I'm not sensing it as much. And Fiercey's sensing that too. Blackhawk saying, these are grown men. Buddy is not crucial. This ain't kindergarten. Well, we got to remember just how close and fun their friendship was when they were rookies. And that's the difference. And I think that it is really like it's a 7 years later kind of thing. And they're just different people in some ways. I think that's part of it. In some ways, they may have been very childish and fun. Like, Scotty's younger now. They were in a young, immature phase like Scotty is now. And now they've grown up and they're more NBA pros. And in some ways, their friendship doesn't like lock in like it used to, is kind of the thing. Time changes, people change, and that's just how things go. I like what you're saying. This is in kindergarten, but it is good to have friendships and like be buddy buddy because you do more for your friends. Trust me. You can ask Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart when they acquired Josh Hart to come and play on the Knicks. That was huge for them because Jalen Brunson's best friends with Josh Hart. They love each other very much from their college days at Villanova. And that is a big, big part of why the Knicks are successful right now. Is there's good vibes, there's good feelings from having friends around, people you really do genuinely enjoy and can trust no matter what. And I'm wondering what's going on with that connection between Pirtle and Siakam. I really am. Let's see. Cool Cat saying, Lex, Pascal and Yak are very close friends still. They operate privately. Pascal has learned from the media and public not to show anything publicly that matters to him. Yeah, I think you're probably right. And I don't want to read into it too much. It's just I like the overt symbols of it. Like I want to see these guys have fun and smile and laugh together. Is that asking too much? In some ways, I didn't see that. In some ways, I felt like, I was worried about Pirtle fitting in. And I felt like in some ways he hasn't totally fit in correctly with our team right away. Maybe he sensed the unsettled weirdness about the team this whole year when he came in. But in some ways, I worry about Pirtle getting ingratiated with them. I mean, obviously they like him and he plays well with them. But in some ways, I want them to be like cool outside and in other places. Like they're very cool and close. And you can tell. You're probably right, Cool Cat, that everything's fine on the down low and there's just hidden at this point. I want to believe what you're saying because I want them to be strong and connected. MSJ saying Core gets one more season together. Contract situation with Fred, but looks like he will get paid. Locked into a decent but not excellent team. Not the worst thing. Becoming a sub 400 team would be. Well, it's like Masai said, the parity this season was unparalleled to any other season in the NBA's history. And in some ways, it doesn't take a whole lot to take a 500 team and make them a very good team. It's just things got to click and start to flow and work really well together. And that's the difference for us. We get things to work. We didn't have things working last year, and we still managed a 500 season exactly. So if we get things to work a little better, the chemistry's a little better, and we shoot better and our offense is better, we're going to be way better. And that's the difference. And like the core won't matter. The core is actually really good right now. And that's why Masai says he believes in this core. It's just that we got to get better results out of them by directing them better. And that's what's going to happen next year. I fully believe it. If we have a downgrade and we have another regressive year, that's going to be really shocking to me because it'll show there's some really, really bad problems with our team. But I don't predict that. I think it's really going to be like an on-off year kind of thing with us since the bubble year, the Tampa year, last year, this year, it's like a wave. It's like up, down, up, down, up, down. And so we should be coming back up to an up year next year. Let's see. Fiercely saying at Cool Cat, this is good then. I'm glad they're still tight. I want to believe Cool Cat too, and she might be very well right. I'm just speculating. I'm trying to look at every little detail, and in some ways, the homecoming of Jakob wasn't as pronounced and crazy and amazing as I thought it would be this end of the season. I thought it was going to be like really good vibes that he's coming in and they're reunited. And I saw it in some places, like Pascal did say some good things about having him back. Fred said some good things about having him back. But I wanted to feel it and see it more in the vibes overall on the team. And I didn't see that. I guess the bad vibes and the vibes with Nick were too much bad to cancel out the good vibes of Yak returning. Cool Cat saying Pascal went to Vienna, Yak's country, last summer. Pascal has been abused publicly from media and fans, so he has learned to shut them out. They connect every summer since they parted. This is actually true. They go on vacations with each other and they meet in certain places. And you're right. A lot of it is secret. You're actually making a really good argument that my speculation about their relationship and where it's at is probably unfounded and it's probably pretty stupid. It's just, I want to try and look at every little aspect of everything. Now, I didn't want to talk about this during the season, but this was something that I'd already been thinking about for a couple months. And now that the season's over and they're not in the middle of it, I'll talk about it more right now openly. But this is something that I almost brought up like a month or so ago while we were still playing. But I purposefully didn't bring this up because I didn't want to open up a can of worms while we were still in competition, like Nick Nurse did before the Philadelphia game. So in some ways, it's like I was already worried about this and I've just brought it up now. But I like that you're giving me good evidence to the contrary. And I did totally forget that Siakam and Jakob, ever since they've been in the NBA, have made special vacations together and hung out in other places in the offseason together. And that they still do that, probably. You're probably exactly right. In fact, they probably went and hung out immediately after the season was over. They went and hung out at that beautiful place that Siakam goes to every offseason. Nameless is saying it's not about his ego, man. Fred is too good to come off the bench. He needs to be out there more, not less. How he impacts the game. He had a bad year. He's way, way better than what we saw. You'll see. Well, once again, in your statement, Nameless, you're making it sound like coming off the bench is a bad thing. I hate this. This is something that is in the new NBA. It's bullshit. It's highlight culture. It's dunk culture. It's offensive culture. It's like putting esteem on certain things that shouldn't really fucking matter. Starting or not starting, it doesn't really matter. The old NBA, it never did. There were very highly esteemed guys that came off the bench that were just the sixth man and got really good acclaim and were known around the league. I brought up different names like Kevin McHale, Michael Cooper, Ricky Pierce. There's all kinds of great six men in the league history that are very highly esteemed, and everybody knows they could start for a lot of different teams, but it's a strategic decision by a team to not start all of your best players and to leave some for your second unit when they come out. And that's something that I feel like Nick Nurse failed at the most, and it's kind of messed up Raptors Nation for thinking that we just have to start our absolute best players all the time. No, you don't. In fact, in some ways, that's a failed strategy to me, that you want to divvy up your players between your bench and your starters. And that's part of the reason why our bench has been so bad is, in some ways people are complaining about Fred being too short or being too slow. Well, put him on the bench and let him excel and do things from there. And then he won't have all those weaknesses from the starting lineup. In some ways, my plan is the halfway between the Fred haters and the Fred lovers and how it can make it work. Now, I know you're saying he's too good to come off the bench, but there's a lot of guys in this league who are too good to come off the bench. And that's bullshit anyway. If he comes off the bench and he averages 30 to 35 minutes a game and still averages close to 20 points a game, is it going to matter if he starts or not? No. He'll get the same touches. He'll get the same opportunities. He'll get the same minutes. It's just that they're staggered into the bench minutes instead of being in part of the starters minutes. And if his team's doing better off the bench, they'll play the bulk of the game instead of the starters later on. Do you understand? I'm trying to cultivate competition and lighting a fire under all their asses. And in some ways, this is the way you light a fire under Fred's ass. So you're coming off the bench this year. It was like, well, I want to prove to you that I should be starting. We'll do that all over again. And boom, he'll play so good off the bench that he'll prove that I should be starting again. And then we'll be like, okay, maybe we should start Fred. That's what I'm saying. You can light a fire under people's asses by changing things up and shaking them up like this. And I think in some ways, this may be good for Fred. It could be also really good for our bench and making better production from it. Let's see. Wayne's saying Isolation in the playoffs is shown to be anti-productive and anti-winning. Topic is about coaches and the necessities we require for future success. Let's enjoy the process and learn effective strategy. Yeah, I don't think isolation may be good for regular season and just carrying your team for a while, but it does not work in the playoffs. I agree with Wayne. And that's why I don't like if he's going to be our number one guy, we're not going to get very far ever. In some ways, this is the same shit we learned with DeMar was very isolation kind of player too. And all the years that we would rely on him and Lowry and they would not show up, it didn't work. And that's why we can't have that template of DeRozan and Lowry from before in the playoffs now with Siakam and Van Vliet. We need a different kind of persona of our top players that is more effective in high pressure playoff situations to be successful and make shots. And I'm totally with Wayne on this. Isolation doesn't work in the playoffs. We know this unless you're somebody crazy like Kevin Durant. Then it can work. And I love like whatever the coaches are going to do is going to be great. New Thousands here. Let's see what New Thousands saying. If we retired coaches' names in the arenas, who would be retired first, Casey or Nurse? That's a great question. Thank you, New Thousand, for coming in. Good to see you again. It's been a little bit. I will say that it's going to be Nurse just because of the championship. Now, if Casey could get it too, because he's our most winningest coach as far as he's won the most games as a Raptors coach, but in some ways you don't really retire a name or put somebody up there. It's really for the accolade of championship. So I'm going to say it would be Nurse. G saying, why do I feel Delano and Harper Jr. will surprise us this season, especially with Masai really wanting to focus on development? I think Koloko will make some strides as well. I love that prediction, and I hope you're right. You know, Ron Harper Jr. is like a mini Scotty Barnes. People don't realize this. He's got a very wide body. He's just a little bit shorter than Scotty, but he does a lot of the same things that Scotty can, all around good play. And in some ways, I like what Ron could be possibly for us. Now, Delano, oh my gosh, there's so many things about Delano that are very interesting and great about him. And I hope you're right, G. I'd like to see both those guys make a jump with more opportunities with a new coach. Blackhawks saying we need a two-way coach, no more defensive coach or offensive coach. You better be both. Yeah, I'm with that for sure. You better definitely have good offensive skills. The offense is the side that we really need the most work on. I think that somebody could come in and figure out a pretty good defense easily with our guys and our personnel. It's the offensive side. I want to see creativity and better results from. That the offense has been so bad for the Raptors for a couple of years. We got to change that the most. That's the side I want to see the most from. Monique saying Ron has a 10 plus career, G, and I'll keep saying it. You think that he's going to average 10 plus points a game? Wow, Monique, that's a lofty goal for him. We'll have to see if you're right. It could be. Space is saying having Fred come off the bench doesn't make much sense to me, especially when he was the highest plus minus. What you need is just more guard depth and someone who can challenge him for minutes. Well, I mean, if we start Scotty at point guard and he actually gets that time, it's like a safety thing. Like if Scotty's not working at point guard, well, you give him the hook and you bring out Fred and you put him in immediately after him. In some ways, it opens up another starter spot. In some ways, there's different things. I know it doesn't totally make sense to you guys, but to me, it does. It makes so much sense in so many different ways. But we'll see. I could be like totally crazy and like fringe on this topic, and this may not go anywhere or be realistic, like you guys are saying. But who knows if they do something crazy like this? Remember, I said it first. Nameless said the Nick Nurse cloud over the team tainted Jakob's return and your expectations, pal. Yeah, you're exactly right. I think you're exactly right, and we didn't exactly know that on the down low. That in some ways, Nick, like the whole thing, the energy around Nick was so bad that it didn't matter. And Jakob seemed frustrated when he came in. He didn't seem like, wow, I was really happy to be back. And this was overall a good experience, but it's not exactly right. Is kind of the vibes I got from Jakob as far as like, I'm really happy to be back in Toronto and out of San Antonio. But also, this isn't exactly what I thought I was walking into. That things were like, I didn't realize things were kind of this bad here. It's maybe how he felt when he came and he finally got here on the ground. Let's see. Blackhawks saying May 16th, we get a top four first round pick with our 2% chance. Then we trade down for 2 or 3 first round picks. This is a diss on Masai and what he's been doing lately. I don't know. I think they're going to just take whatever pick they get this year and pick from that. You know, it's not about a lot of picks. It's about having one pick, and it doesn't even matter where it is. It could be Koloko early in the second round, and it'll still be a badass pick. So I trust in Masai on the 13th pick, or if he gets some lottery draft pick luck and he gets a little higher in the draft, hey, I'll be happy with that too. G saying Masai values his veteran point guards unless it's for a high IQ experienced point guard in a package for a superstar. I don't see Fred being traded. They don't even have a reliable backup point guard. Yeah, in some ways that we'd be really up a creek without a paddle. And some people have said this. There's a very much contingency saying that Fred is so essential for our team because we don't have enough of what he gives to our team otherwise. We really, and this, I think this is true. And this is part of the reason why I really defend him and say that, these other guys, we have other guys who can step up and do some of the stuff they do. But Fred is pretty unique on this team as far as what he brings and how he's important to our team. It's something that we would very dearly miss. As I said before, we lose Fred, we lose Kyle. We lose both of them because in some ways Fred is Kyle at this point. And if we lose Fred, we're going to lose everything with Kyle because it doesn't latch on to Malachi fast enough, and Malachi's not capable enough. So we lose Fred, we lose Kyle, is what I keep saying. Cool Cat saying another thing, Scotty and Pascal get along too. Scotty goes to Pascal's house too and is being mentored by him to be a franchise player. Scotty does the Lowry thing with Pascal does the Lowry thing with Scotty. I didn't know that. In some ways, I haven't seen them be that connected. Like in some ways, they don't seem like they have a lot in common. And then in some ways, that's what I worry about is that they're having a hard time bonding, Scotty and Pascal. Now, I know Fred said very specific things on how he's mentoring Scotty in his press conference the other day. He gave a laundry list of things that he's talking about with Scotty, and I was like, these are all the perfect things, and these are exactly what Kyle would have done with him before. He's passing it on. I've not seen any signs that Pascal is doing this, but if you know that Scotty's going to his house and this is happening, okay. But I haven't seen it. And in some ways, Siakam is not that kind of player that kind of mentors people like going down. He doesn't seem like that guy. So I'm going to be a little suspicious of your comment here, Cool Cat, but I don't know if it's true or not. So I can't say that it isn't true. It could be true, but I haven't seen any of the signs of this. So I don't know. Cool Cat saying Pascal gets along with the young guys. He's the explainer of what Fred means in a softer tone. Fred cusses the fuck out. Then Pascal explains it in English. Fred didn't do that this season, though. In fact, he wants to do that. He wants to cuss them out, but he pussyfooted around them this year. He was being a nice guy. And if there's anything that Fred realized from this season, he needs to be more of a hard ass and cuss them out more because he didn't this year. In fact, that's part of the reason why they were complacent. And that's why Fred said, I have to be more myself with this team. I was being a people pleaser and I was trying not to rock the boat. I didn't say things to Scotty that I should have said. So that didn't happen this year. In fact, in some ways, Fred needed to be more on Scotty's ass. And that's what he realizes. That's what I took from what Fred said. He said he was too easy and honest and not honest enough with these guys and holding them accountable. And that's why we got this mid-ass season where everybody's casual. Fred is coming back next year even more talking to them in that way. And in some ways, Scotty's good for it. I don't think Scotty has a problem with veteran players telling him what to do. I think that that's a whole thing made up by Pensera, this bullshit. This Scotty's very teachable. And even if they come at him in a hard way, I don't think he's that kind of guy that gets upset about this. You got to remember, Scotty was at LA Fitness with the old heads when he was like 13, and they were probably pushing him around and treating him like shit and crazy. And that was a hard world to be as a young boy against men in LA Fitness, playing man one-on-one, run on 5-on-5 up and down the court in there. And if you wanted to stay on that court, you had to stay out there. So I don't think this is an issue. I think this is a made-up bullshit thing by Who Shall Not Be Named, that there's issues with taking direction from older players because they're hard asses or they're cussing people out. No, I don't think this is an issue. I think that's bullshit. And that, Scotty would welcome Fred cussing him out and telling him exactly what he needs to do. That's just a whole thing that was made up by Pensera, that there was a conflict between them and stuff like that. It sounds like what Fred said, that he's talked to him and he's listening to him and he's taking what he's told him to do this summer seriously. And he's not going to be on Twitch so much. He's going to be in the gym more. Fred said Scotty needs to be a gym rat. Well, Scotty's going to be a gym rat. We've already seen him in a pro-am this summer, and he's working is what he's doing. I don't believe this. I don't know if this is true. I can't see Pascal stepping in and saying, oh, this is what Fred meant if in a nicer way. Where is this evidence, or where are you getting this from? I feel like the last couple comments about Pascal, I have not seen any of his evidence. And I don't get what you're saying because I don't see Siakam as like a mentor on this team. I don't see him as a guy who's actively involved with the young guys teaching them stuff. I see him as a leader on the team on the court, but I don't see him like hanging out and telling them this is how you be a pro or anything like that. No, I don't see him in that role. He just doesn't have that personality. So I don't know. I don't know if you're right. I can't say if you're right or wrong, but I don't see what you're saying. Is what I'm saying. Josh is saying, does losing Gary affect bench production as he is the team's second best guard in terms of shot creation? It does, as Space Cadet is saying. Yeah, it does, which is why this team's biggest need is to address the bench. Yeah, good answer, and I is exactly right. It does affect it. We're gonna have to replace him. If he's gone, we're gonna have to get somebody who's just good or better. Uh, Otto Porter could be kind of this role next year for us, just in case we don't replace him directly this summer. But we'll see. I mean, this is going to be a big deal. It's kind of scary, just like what I was saying with Fred. You lose Fred, you lose certain things. Well, Gary's a similar kind of player. He's not like anybody else on the team. And if we lose Gary, that could be a little dangerous because he's one of the few guys on our team that can make his own shot, like create his own shot out of nowhere. And that's a little scary to me in some ways. We're definitely going to need to replace him if we don't get him back. Monique's saying when we have big topics like this one, your streams will be longer. Yeah, I guess you're right, Monique. Lexathon in full effect. That's funny. Wayne's saying previous point is that Bob McCown's section of the media was saying Nick Nurse heard the Udoka rumor and then he reacted with that Philly comment. That's their narrative to malign Masai and elevate Nick. Well, this is the thing. Those forces want to tear down the Raptors just in general. It may be very much Rogers Media, even though they're part owner of the team. They don't want the Raptors to succeed, and they want it to tear. Press does this shit. This is the same thing with the OG stuff. No, this isn't how it went down. Those rumors came out before this, and honestly, Nick's not going to be like. Is he going to be that scared of that happening if he feels good about his position? No. Why would he rock the boat? So there's all kinds of ways I can logically poke holes through this bullshit that Bob McCown's trying to say, like by just using logic and thinking about it. Does that make any fucking sense? Nick wanted to be our coach. If he heard any of those rumors, well, he said he's heard news all year of noise about the players and about himself. Why would he upset him like that? Bob McCown's so stupid. Why would you put that out there like that? That doesn't make any sense. He's trying to make Masai look bad. And he's trying to make parts of the Raptors nation turn on Masai and say he needs to go too. So yeah, this dude's not for us. He's a bad media person, and he's honestly doesn't know jack shit about NBA. He should just stick to hockey. But yeah, that's bullshit. If they're trying to twist it like that, that's completely wrong. The timing's wrong, first of all, and it doesn't make sense why Nick would do that if he wanted to keep the job over Udoka. No, this was totally Clutch meddling and telling him to do this shit. And they probably put this shit out first, is what I'm saying. Clutch put the shit out about Udoka, and Nick was in on it. So Bob McCown, we can punch holes in logic like through your stuff because it doesn't make any sense. Cool Cat saying blame Nick Nurse for the isolation plays, not the players. I can do that. That's Nick Nurse's scheme. He has been teaching Scotty isolation skills too, and trying with OG with less success. Yeah. And in some ways, that would be great. We keep Siakam, and next year he's utilized in less isolation and utilized better, and maybe as a cutter or screener, or just like getting open and like getting passes past him. Yes, I love all that. If we can make that all happen, and sure, I'll scapegoat Nick Nurse for the isolation. Sure, I'm all about that, and it's not Siakam's fault for sure. Most saying 10 plus assists in a season for Iran. Okay. You're saying he's going to average 10 assists a game. Wow. I thought you meant points. Okay. G saying, so our rumor prompted Nurse to respond in that manner. Nick is not that soft or petty. Rumors are always around. That spin is crazy. See, G's is saying exactly what I was saying to that doesn't make any sense. Whatever Bob McCown's saying, you can poke a logical hole through it right in the middle. That doesn't make any fucking sense. G's tearing it down just like I am. He's not that soft or petty like that. This was very calculated. He didn't make that mistake on purpose. Clutch told him to do that press conference in Philly. Blackhawk saying, no diss on the first round picks. Just nice to get two more. Grady Dick, Carson Wallace, Taylor Hendricks look nice. Well, if we got the roster spots and the spots to move them forward, as Logical Raptors Fanatic has said on his channel, you can get all these players, but if you don't have places for them to grow and have a spot in the garden to come up, well, what the fuck? You're gonna have to get rid of a couple. So I don't value quantity, I value quality. And if we can have only one pick instead of two picks, that's good in some ways. I know people want more and all more guys, but in some ways, more guys makes it more clouded and not necessarily good. Let's distill it all to one person and have that one really good guy instead of like two or three guys that are okay, is what I'm saying. MSJ saying, have a good day, everyone. Right back at you, MSJ. Fun guy saying, I fully agree. We don't have enough of Fred to talk about losing him. We need more guards who can handle and shoot like Fred. Losing him would be taking steps back unless we get a competent replacement. Yeah, I can get behind that completely. And Space Cadet saying the problem is getting a competent replacement is hard. How many available high IQ point guards are there right now? Chris Paul, Kyle Lowry, not many. That's his haters don't understand. They don't grow on trees. And Wayne's saying, "Well said, Lex. Enjoy your day." Thanks, you guys too for being here today. It's been a fun stream. We didn't concentrate on the coaches as much as I'd like to, but it's okay. If you guys check out my spreadsheet, and you can see the work I did yesterday as far as like looking at their ages. I've got their head coach experience. I've got their NBA player experience. I've got who they coached under. I've got whether they were an old part of our team or not, and whether they won or not. And also their best development development stories as far as coaches. So the 15 candidates right now that I found yesterday that are most talked about are, first of all, they're old, experienced head coaches coaches Kenny Atkinson, Frank Vogel, and Sam Cassell. I'm not as interested in those three guys because they've been kind of around and they're not that flashy, and they'd be downgrades with Nick Nurse. Honestly, that's something we found out today that's very important, is that we want this to look like it's not like a downgrade in a major way. And I think if we get an old coach like Rex Kalamian or even Messina or Scarioli from we get somebody like that, they're not going to be really like good fits. So it's really we want a flashy guy that will be kind of equitable. And that's why Ime Udoka is the one that makes the most sense in some ways. Now, I can understand. I've been very high on Earl Watson, and in some ways, the player coach that he is a detriment. In some ways, the fact that he's never won is a detriment, and the fact that he is so closely tied with Nick Nurse is a detriment also. But I do like the comfortableness of him being in house and him being a former player and him being able to be have some clout with the referees and the rest of the NBA because he's a known person who's been around the NBA for a long time. He's more likely to get respect from Tony Brothers than, say, Patrick Mutombo is. And that's something that I really factor into what matters about getting our new coach is, are they going to have respect in the league with the refs? And in some ways, some of these guys will not on this list, and some will. So as of right now, my top 5 picks for Raptors head coach are Earl Watson, Jerry Stackhouse, Ime Udoka, Patrick Mutombo, and Charles Lee. So those 5 guys are the ones that I really want to look at and possibly have. If it's one of those 5 guys that gets hired, well, hey, that'll be cool. Blackhawk saying those are top 15 picks. You make room if you have the opportunity. We can be better than the Magic or Pacers for that level of talent. We are better than the Magic or Pacers already right now. We just didn't prove it on the court and play up to that level because the coach didn't get it out of us. But we're better than both those teams right now, for sure. For sure. All right. Thanks for watching, y'all. Just real quick. Kawhi Leonard's sister's going to prison for life for murdering a woman in a casino bathroom. Good games last night. Philly sweeping their series with Brooklyn. Phoenix taking the lead over the Clippers 3-1. The Miami Heat are up on the Bucks now, and the Lakers are up 2-1 over the Grizzlies. Games tonight. Scotty was at the Leaf game last night, helping them win in overtime with Larry Tannenbaum. It's awesome to see him hanging out with the owner of the Raptors in the offseason. The games tonight. Zach Zarba, Tyler Ford, Giannis Petraeus are the refs for the Boston-Atlanta game. Zach favors the Celtics. Meanwhile, Tyler and Giannis actually favor the Hawks. All 3 referees in New York tonight favor the Cleveland Cavaliers over the Knicks. That's Scott Foster, Trey Maddox, and Kevin Cutler. Denver is favored by all 3 refs in Minnesota: David Guthrie, Bill Kennedy, and Ray Acosta. Golden State is favored by all 3 refs in their game: Josh Tiven, James Williams, and Pat Frayer. Thanks for watching me today. Please subscribe, like, comment, share, whatever you can do. I appreciate y'all. Tomorrow we'll do a Monday memory celebrating Scotty Barnes winning the Rookie of the Year a year ago today. So please join me tomorrow morning, 9:30 a.m. for a quick Monday memory celebrating Scotty's Rookie of the Year win from last year. All right, y'all. Have a great day and have a good time. Get out there and touch grass. As Scotty would say, touch grass and share the love. All right, let's go Raptors and let's go Maple Leafs. You got this, baby. Get past the first round.